in the email, like when we do a group email, that name is up there.
Yeah,
but I didn't
and
know
he's
that.
from my
Okay.
district, and I just don't think he got permission. Speaker of the House of Representatives, in parentheses, Kimberly Bostic never attended. Then Speaker of the House of Representatives, still awaiting appointment. State Board Head of Teacher Prep Program, still awaiting appointment. As of today. Days and locations where the work group met, I put the September 22nd and 23rd in the Governor's Building, October 2nd and October 3rd in the Jefferson Building, and then I put today's date in Jefferson Building. Okay, question number 6. Did the work group bring in outside people to help? We did not, did we? No. Did the work group contact and ask the opinions of outside people, and who are those people?
Does that mean when we go to suggestions?
Yeah, cause that means when we go back to our district and take them and let people look at them, that's gonna be a long.
Long
yeah,
list.
long
Yeah.
list.
Can we just say,
District.
Can we just say the name of the district that we
District
went back
personnel.
to? Yeah.
Well, I don't even think, do we have to list the districts, can we just say?
This is what I
Is
was
that-
thinking today.
here's my thinking on that. Is that even something that we even wanna do, because I know there's a lot of educators that don't even wanna be associated one way or the other with this.
I think it would be nice today if we had 4 kindergarten teachers sitting at a table. Active kindergarten teachers.
Well, Jan and I were talking too, it would be nicer to have a few more elementary heads together at this table. Not just kindergarten, but
Well, I just mean because we're working on K-5,
Well-
like when we were working on 5, we do that 5 different teachers together.
I mean, through the grade levels, 2 of each would have been nice.
Yes.
The problem is the financing of it.
Yes.
You can't ask them to come on their nickel.
Uh-huh.
And be
And
gone from
the
school.
school districts are having to get subs.
Well, do you think we can
And
note
just
that
as
in our
Brad was saying,
report?
some of them don't wanna be associated with the work or without the work, you know.
Yeah.
And I
the
don't think
other
this question is actually asking what our opinions are, it's did we contact anybody outside for our group, for our group? Yeah. Are you guys fine with me saying no?
Well,
I
you know,
would like to.
I would say not formally. I mean, we didn't,
Okay.
as a group, we didn't formally
Right.
contact anyone for
No.
I think we need to be bringing in teachers, or at least inviting them.
We could talk to
when
the
we work on
612
specific
work group.
grade levels, just to get some input.
I thought that might value their opinions.
Oh yeah, we could say we talked to the 6 through 12 grade group, but then we could list that, and they have those names.
Well, how about we just say that? Okay. We.
I don't think they could possibly expect us to list all the people we've individually spoken to.
I don't know, I could, I don't know if I remember. Because, you know, just come up with conversation. I plan
We're gonna need another sheet of paper.
like what?
Serious, like we are.
I think as much as possible, and that one that says that you're bringing out some people, we should be, at least put the note of how, who's gonna pay for their expenses. You know, some response.
Actually, to that question there, I went to 9 different school districts,
Can we say,
talked to the curriculum writers and the teachers.
let's say.
Which one, number 7?
Several
Number 7.
members had informal.
Well, if he went to 9 and you went to yours and I went to mine, I mean,
We
we're at
could,
11
we
districts
could
right there.
simply say that we talked to district,
Local school district.
local school districts, but they asked to remain anonymous. I mean, if
They don't need names.
I don't think I'd
Okay,
say
here's what I
anonymous.
have
I'd
for
just
that.
say, we went and talked to local school districts, each one of us went to our local school district and got input from
We are talking.
their opinion, that's it.
yeah,
Here's
all
what
I'm
I
saying.
have,
If they
we
want something
contacted and
beyond
met
that.
with the secondary math work group on 2 different occasions. Several members of our group had informal conversations with local school districts.
Yes.
Okay. 8, what progress was made this month in the work groups?
Drafted 5th grade.
We don't like that in 2 days in a row.
Yeah. What do you say?
Yeah, we don't like it.
Rough draft of
Or you could
Well,
just
I
say
don't know
we've
if
labeled the
should say it.
domains.
Yeah, cause I don't
I
think
would
it's a
start there.
complete draft even.
Yeah, I would say the,
Identified and labeled.
it's a draft.
It's, I was gonna say, it's a rough draft.
It's a
Yeah.
sketchy
I mean,
draft.
Call it.
But that's what a rough draft is.
It's not near as rough as a 6-12.
Yeah.
They're still all, yeah, they don't even have, they haven't even
Just like most
started
Desi
yet.
stuff, it'll say draft forever.
So it was not even on paper back then.
Okay, so we have identified and labeled fifth grade domains. And.
Actually, the domains we've labeled all the way through.
Well,
Yeah, we read this with
But we haven't
each
used
grade.
Well, I kinda did,
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
with third grade when I did my,
started.
Oh, you switched them already? I
Yeah,
just
right.
told them.
well, there's a roommate I took it, but I just took some.
Grade.
Well, you know, some of them were basic, and you know, so it would be. Would use that, not in there.
Do we wanna say anything more? We have identified and labeled fifth grade, domains and have started a draft of fifth grade standards.
Currently working in kindergarten.
Girl, Mom.
Yeah, well,
Get up for kindergarten.
figure it out.
From fifth grade to 5-year-olds.
Okay, what, here we go, here's the big one. What problems did the work group have and how were they resolved?
Well, we have
That's it.
worked through. We have worked through
Logistics.
logistics and account planning, we have worked through.
We'll come up with this, a draft structure.
We have come to draft structure.
Which means we did the work that it was, they pretty much like the structure, like I said, we'll
Yeah.
probably use your structure.
So logistics, do we need to add anything more to that or just? I think one of the big problems was interpretation of the law.
Yeah.
You can put it in with one money.
Yeah, no financial.
That's number 11.
That's a logistical problem.
Yeah, my school would like a little reimbursement, please.
Yeah,
they're willing-
they're willing to continue to help me with this, but the thing is, we like to send teachers and other people obviously. So
Yeah.
maybe have fun finding
Okay,
out.
logistics, draft structure, interpretations of the law, no financial support for travel expenses. I think another problem that we had that was part of our discussion was which resources we could use and not use. Yeah. Future meetings. Should we just put undecided?
Yeah, what was the conversation about the 7?
We probably need to decide because Leslie's gonna have to leave pretty quick.
Yeah, I gotta be in
Yeah, and I need to leave by between 3 and 4.
So how many can be here on the seventh? If you,
I think that's the only date I can be in November. Otherwise, I have a conference in Springfield the next weekend.
Myra can't, and then James, you, but as long as we leave early,
Right, I can be here for,
Not
not
but you have
right? Just shoot, possibly. Oh, you're not, are you, he
I'll be
will be here?
I'll be here.
so we still have enough without them.
I think if we go past the 7, then we're gonna meet the holidays.
And I have a conference that next week. I just know that is the only Friday I can.
So,
And is that gonna be, are we gonna work on first grade?
well, that's what my, could we finish kindergarten, start first grade, or do you want, like, you've got the expertise there, don't you?
I taught first grade for a few years.
I taught first grade.
So that would be the, I mean, it's just gonna be a draft, and we'll put it in the Dropbox.
I'm gonna visit with my curriculum director and see if we can get a couple first grade teachers to visit from our district and pay them professional money. I'll pay for their room next year.
But I don't, can we have
I don't
them
know if we
here?
could do, they were not,
Well, didn't it say have you invited people in?
we can invite.
but I don't think they can.
They're not, they can come as observers. I don't know.
I think we're allowed to ask people to participate. I think that's ours.
Yeah, I think that-
It's very open. I don't think we can tell anybody they
I
can't.
think it's within our scope to ask people to come.
If they just listen, they can write things down on note cards as they listen.
We can even ask their opinions. As long as we're asking the opinion, not sitting around outside and saying, hey, I don't like that.
Yeah, I think it's not a public meeting per se, but I think if you ask people for input and you bring them to the table, I think we can do that.
Yes.
I just don't think you can have a free-for-all discussion from people who are sitting out there. If they want to come up and make comments while we're meeting, I think that's what it specifically says, that they can't do that, that's why they have to be.
Then you gotta be very careful what teachers you have come, because a lot of them are very, they love their jobs. And it's hard sometimes to sit there and have other people decide to speak, you know, and I'm not, I would love to have a kindergarten teacher in here, and I just know that, you know, even my teacher in my building, Lisa, would be amazing to have in here, but she's not gonna sit on the sidelines and just, she's gonna wanna have an active role, but that's not gonna be her role when we invite them in. So we gotta be very careful who,
They have to know the
they
expectations.
gotta know the expectations.
That would be torture for me if I.
It would be torture for me, I would not be able just to sit there
Maybe it's better
and,
to take what we create back and let people look at it, kind of what we've been doing. Would that be
because
better?
then they can really sit and look at it and take, you know, and then, I don't know, I just think that would be very hard for me, as passionate as I am about teaching. I just think they are passionate, you know, we are passionate about our career, so it's tough to sit and listen to it, and if we say something, I mean, we teach fifth grade, and we might be saying something completely off for kindergarten, and they're gonna go, what are you talking
I
about?
would hope that if we did something like that, that they would be included at the table and in the discussion, and they would be able to.
I would like to
Because it-
get
I mean, again,
clarification
it is,
on that, because
I think it's within
So
our
this,
ability
that
to do
question
that.
there, are we even allowed to put
because
them
the
at the
work group
table?
itself is supposed to consist of
The
the people
appointed,
that haven't been appointed. I love the idea. I
I
would
do
love to
too.
have
I do
teachers here
too.
at every grade level, but I wanna make sure
sure
that,
that they are allowed to,
because if we each bring in 3 or 4 grade level teachers, then we're expanding this.
Sure.
I'm just gonna say it wouldn't happen, I don't think, because school districts, I think it's hard enough to turn
You're not gonna let
out what, hey, I mean, for me, one from my district, because of the money.
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna afford the teachers showing up.
Okay, here's question number 11. Is there anything this office can do to help the work group? Could you pose the question?
Compensation.
compensation, because now they're even taking away our food. Yes.
Are they really?
Yeah.
This
So
is
it
our
was
last
last
lunch
lunch
ticket.
This is your last free meal.
I wouldn't even call it free.
Yeah.
There was such thing as a free lunch.
Continue for lunch.
I mean, even if it's mileage, can they compensate mileage? I mean, something. It's gotta be something.
I know some of the legislators said that they were gonna be trying to add
Talking
something
about
in come January
Okay.
because they had overlooked that fact. So
But, you know,
just a little reminder.
I don't know if it goes retroactive or not.
Right,
I don't know.
that's the other thing. Are you gonna retroactive this?
Should be.
Well, I would hope so.
Anything else you guys wanna add to any of those questions? I went ahead and put November 7th as our next meeting. And we'll keep it at that.
I'm a little bit worried about how many more days we're looking at. And if we meet November 7th and we don't meet till January, the pace that we're going, we have a lot of days ahead of us to meet, it feels like.
I feel like we're ahead of a lot of them. That's probably true.
So you think
We
we
are.
can meet more?
Maybe try to get another one in before Christmas. Hate to say that.
I don't know where you're gonna fit it, I don't know where you're gonna fit it in.
It had, for me, it had to be at the beginning of December, and then you've got. According to the percentages. Oh, yes.
It's gonna be bad, isn't it?
What about,
I guess we can worry about it after Christmas.
oh, I had something to do with that.
For me as a teacher, it would be much easier for me to come in the summer. I know that's not for the people who work outside education, but I mean, it'd be easy for me to.
What was that day in, what was that day in May even?
That makes my.
Oh, May 26th is that's the high school day. That's what we have to.
That's their next meeting date after
January 30th is their today, after today, their next meeting is
January, and then May, or,
and then February, March, and May.
When will they decide if they're
Man,
going to use these or not?
Me
Or
too.
when?
Not till October.
So we're,
October, yeah,
we're sticking with those days that were in the email.
No, we're not.
So we haven't voted on them yet.
Yeah,
Well, well,
The only
May
one we have is
26th.
I know some
November
of those I
seventh is
can't.
set. Okay, so let's look at January 30th. What did we think about that? Or did you wanna
What
propose
day
a
of the week?
December date?
I don't know that it'll work, I just am worried about how much work we have ahead of us.
We could meet at least just once a month, you know. I don't think one day a month. If we could
30th
be
is the
here
last
that
Friday.
January, that they're going to be here, that by then we might need to meet for the end.
It's a Friday, January 30th.
I think they use Fridays quite frequently, don't they?
Do you guys prefer Fridays or Mondays?
I would prefer.
Me too.
Or Mondays are all full.
I come in with a
Fridays.
table and
Yeah,
have their
exactly.
dinner.
I would prefer Friday.
Let's see, those days are next, so if Tuesdays would be, Tuesday, Friday would be bad.
Okay, the 30th. Is there anyone who cannot do the 30th right now?
Oh, I'm sorry, which day?
January
January.
30th, Friday, January 30th. If we vote that one in, then if we need to speak with secondary, we could. If we didn't, it wouldn't matter.
what was the next, yeah, the next thing that they wanted to talk about was the mathematical principles, right?
Practice, yeah, and I don't think they're ready yet, so. And they're not gonna meet after today. It sounded like they were in algebra 1, algebra 2. When we came in, it was AREI, like it was that area, so they're either in algebra 1 or algebra 2 in their discussions, so.
I'm not meeting again till January.
Right, and so I don't think we need to meet with them on this day, but if we need to,
And as far as what they were wanting, I mean, that's way down the road.
right?
So, do we wanna vote on January 30th, or are we, anybody that can't? On June, starting at 9 o'clock, so people can.
Yeah, 9 is such a good time. It really is. I leave the same time as my daughter.
And I'm sorry, I missed it. Did we say we are meeting on the 7th?
Yes,
Okay.
so November 7th, January 30th. I think this is all we're gonna get done, because we'll have to file a new report.
I feel like we need to be more specific on, a few of those questions. Just on the one that asks, where did you have problems? If we just say we had problems interpreting, I think they need to know a little bit more about how difficult this has been and I don't know, I think we need to express more to them, I'm talking about this at lunch, just, what we have gone through and what we're doing, because I don't really think they understand
Understand that this
They don't
is
have the
not just something you can flop on a sheet of paper. This is
Well,
very,
I wish there was a way
time
to get
consuming.
that in there a little bit.
I'd like to share with you, our curriculum director at my school shared with me that when she was on the math model curriculum committee, this has been many years back, they had like a year's worth of training first. And then we're given the task of development in another year. So she was just shocked to see how this was thrown together. We were just expected to come exactly together.
I agree, 100. I mean, there are times I've learned a lot by the conversations we've had. And it's made me think deeper about what our standards are and need. But as far as writing, it makes me nervous, right?
Yeah.
To be given that responsibility, because I don't feel like I'm qualified.
It'll be somebody totally different at the table writing assessments.
And the other thing is what, somebody asked earlier just a minute ago, when, we need to be finished with these by when?
October first.
And then who's going to approve them? The state school board? And what are their requirements? What are they looking for when they approve these? What are they
yeah, where's
looking
the rubric?
So I mean, I'd kind of like to know what we're being graded on.
I think the only thing that you're gonna be looking at there is the requirements that fall under the, state fiscal stabilization funds act and your ESCA waivers. And they're gonna be making sure that the standards meet those criteria, otherwise they don't qualify for the waiver. And they could risk having to give back the money that they took for saying we will adopt higher standards, blah, blah, blah. Now then, all that goes down to the interpretation of the federal education.
I think,
So, I mean, it's,
I think there'll be, if we put together a good set of statements that there's broad buy-in on, I think they'll be hard pressed not to accept them. And if they don't, it would have to be because they'll say our waiver or whatever, and our hands are tied. But if they do that, then that's fine.
yes,
I agree. If we come together with something, and we have good, a lot of buy-in on these standards, I think it's politically, if they don't accept them, they're gonna be in a very hard place.
Now, what can we get answers to these questions? If these are not approved, what happens next? Do we go,
status quo.
Or whatever they
we
decide to do.
stay with Common Core, or do teachers teach without standards?
No, status quo. Stays the way it is.
That's why I think it's so imperative that we
Yes, yes,
Because they are our
correct them
standards.
now,
because they are standards.
fix it the way we want it.
And would they throw out all if one group standards wasn't up to par, but the rest were?
Or one group
So
doesn't get theirs
should we-
completed.
Should we ask for outside validation of our standards, or at least review and give recommendations to them?
And if we're setting for the sort of timetable, I would think that we need to have our draft, where we think it's a pretty good set of standards, at least by the end of the school year. And then have some summer months to have some forums, maybe, have some opportunities for people to comment on them, maybe. Well, that's when I would say you send them out to the school districts and try to get comments.
When is
Send them
that
out to
last
professionals.
public hearing date that they have to have on it? One is within a month, one's within 60 days after that, and then
60 days or 6 months?
it may be 6 months.
For 6 months.
6
The
months.
First one is 30
Days.
days.
Second one's 6 months, and then the last one will be right there towards the end, I'm sure.
But what you're saying about the widespread support for whatever we're developing, I think it's gonna be difficult to get that when most schools know it took a lot of training before you write standards, and we're just coming at it.
And who will be writing the test? Your comment was it'll be a whole different group. Well, who's it gonna be? Who's gonna?
I don't know, they're gonna have to come up with a whole lot of money.
I think
It costs
according to House
hundreds
Bill
of thousands of
1490, it
dollars
was
to
gonna
do
be
a
teachers.
test.
Yeah.
There would be teachers from the state,
It's man.
educators from the state that would be writing those tests.
They
And
brought
really
in
from
like,
our-
they
from
brought
our
in like
group's
30
perspective,
for each grade level.
We're kind of in a unique position because we have an end goal. We know where we have to be when we develop our standards. And whereas like you're looking at the 6th through 12th grade, they're a little more open to, they're kind of open-ended. Whereas we know we have a handoff spot, and this is where our kids gotta be at the end.
I like that analogy, pass
So-
the baton.
So we're kind of in a unique area there, but,
As I read this question again, is there anything this office can do to help the work group? It would be nice to have some assurance that our work isn't gonna be for naught. Like, it would be awful if we get to a year from now, and they say, no, sorry, we don't really want these.
And they can do that.
They can.
They can do
On my drive home, every time we meet,
I know, I think about that.
leave here with
Yeah.
a good feeling. I'm like, man, we are the star group. And I know that. And then when I get to about Columbia, I'm like, and then is this worth it?
Look,
I mean,
Are we
going to be
Sisyphus
understand.
pushing the boulder up the hill, and then the boulder's just gonna roll back down the hill?
I had truly never thought about one group's not being accepted and what that would mean for.
Well, it could be.
I'm more
six,
concerned
never
about
thought
that.
about
Yeah.
That issue.
Yeah, because I know there's some groups that are still arguing and fighting and,
Oh, yeah.
and doing, and haven't worked one
ELA's
day.
having a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
ELA or
on
science
anything.
or any
So,
of them.
I mean,
So maybe for number 11, we need to say, answer the
And-
following questions. And we need to come up with 3 or 4 of the most critical questions. But that's how they can help us
To
by
assure
answering
that,
those.
to keep that from happening, could we request some outside and make them from diverse areas, think tanks or whatever, to review our standards at increments as we're developing these, just to show what we have so far and have them make recommendations. So that we're not, so that that doesn't happen, say we have history thrown out.
That's the
or we
whole
have-
idea of the committee though.
that we
We're
want-
the think tank.
Yeah,
supposedly.
that's
That's
putting
what
it
I'm
on
No,
somebody else.
we're not really,
Yeah,
cause
but we can ask
we
for
need
help.
some people
Yeah, we can go to
outside.
outside sources.
We need
but-
outside.
I don't know that asking them to review our stuff and tell us what we need to do.
They can
I
give
don't think they do it for free.
recommendations, we wouldn't necessarily have to accept.
And I'm not as concerned
No,
about
they're not
what
gonna
we
do it
do in
for
this
free.
little room, as much as when we put all of them together, that it doesn't look like a big quilt. And nothing
be
matches
nice,
very well, and it's not
Well, our math.
coordinated, in our math didn't match with science, it's all timelines off, or
And
things
that,
like
that
that.
just proved my point today down there,
Yeah.
because they're gonna have things in science
That
that are gonna
concerns
match up with the grade levels and how they, it does matter how you test it out, because you can't have something tested in fifth grade science that we haven't even done mathematically in
right.
fifth grade.
So it's-
And whatever that one lady wanted to say to me, she was entirely wrong, because she was saying it does not, yes, it does matter what they're tested on in science.
But your point is, somebody's gonna look at the whole thing and go, does this make sense?
Well, we
Does it
need,
all go together? And I don't, we can't do that as an
Well,
individual
at some point,
group,
we're gonna
but
need to
somebody's
build-
gotta do that.
we need to build sort of a bridge committee between us and high school. And then another, a committee to look across high school to science, so,
Yeah.
when,
Or elementary even to science,
Right.
because of how it is.
right, that's what I meant, yeah, math to science.
Yeah, math to science in general.
Right.
Well, it seems like even in this committee, some of our very best sources of information are people that have been in the actual classrooms, been with the kids, and the kids know what the kids can absorb and can't absorb and what rate they can absorb it. Whereas, so it's been a very big learning curve for myself in particular. What if we would get a list of short questions that we would go to a bunch of first grade teachers and just select at random school districts and put that questionnaire out to those first grade teachers and just say, here's what here's what we are thinking about, and have them do input, or maybe go to the curriculum writers who are very well aware of what they have to put on a piece of paper, that they're gonna know whether, we're gonna know then whether they understand what we're trying to say, see what we get back. And if they all go off on a tangent that's not where we want them to go, then we know we have something not quite right. And then we could do that with a very short list of questions for each grade level, or just do it as one broad to a curriculum writer. See what they would come up with just on a brainstorm, and see if it's where we think they ought to be. Because if we fail there, then we're gonna fail on the whole. If we just do a sampling, then we're gonna know, and then really, by doing it that way, we kind of keep it within the committee, and it doesn't, you know what I'm saying, it takes away that, any kind of favoritism type of thing.
I think I read something about public feedback period, didn't I? Any idea when that's supposed to happen? Like
Those are the questions, maybe that's a question. Is there a prescribed feedback
time?
period? Or
I know
is
it says there's public feedback periods, but I don't know when they are or how it's going to be handled,
I
or
would,
whose
I
responsibility
would
it is.
assume that that's your public hearings that they'll be having. Cause they have to list that on the agenda, what they'll be speaking of, so.
Isn't there a spot on, it's not live yet, on the DESI website for public comment?
They have a survey monkey, I haven't looked at it, but I know they have one. I was gonna look at it earlier, but I couldn't get into it.
I still haven't. Okay, so, please answer the following question. What assurance do we have as the elementary math work group that our standards, how do we answer that? Will we take it seriously?
Will be
Will
considered.
be
Give it due
considered.
consideration.
Because I guess I'd like to know who on that school board is the Who's doing the reviewing, you know, who's there?
Yeah, I'd like to know their
From the state-
qualifications,
from the state
how you're
leader.
reviewing this.
I imagine,
The
it'll
same
be-
in the
Yeah.
law.
I imagine it'll be the recommendation
Nine.
of the new state commissioner.
That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking
that's
too,
what I was
there's gonna
thinking
be
too, it's
someone
gonna be
new in
new.
that position by the time all this comes
Well,
through.
but I'm like you, I'd like to know their background. What they're reviewing.
The second question I have is how will work between work groups be shared to assure continuity? Because I just think that's gonna be important. And then is there a prescribed public feedback time period? Any other questions? And I'm gonna put as a form of a question on our compensation.
I'm sure we're not the only ones questioning compensation, I'm pretty sure that's not the only group that's asking.
I'm still upset if we get paid and we don't take our standards, but I'm less upset.
Oh, yeah.
At least you didn't spend your own money
Right.
throwing your time away.
Anything else?
What it says on the website is it lists the 3 public meetings, and then there's another statement. By December 31st, 2014, the Commissioner of Education will revise the procedure for providing feedback on academic standards to the State Board of Education
What was the date?
by the end of the year, December 31st.
December 31st.
Yeah.
Well, see,
We'll revise the procedure for providing feedback on the standards. So the meetings are, the 3 public meetings will be held to elicit feedback, but then there's also going to be a procedure for providing feedback
Which will be in place by the end.
by the end of the year. Yeah, by the end of this calendar year.
This
And I'm assuming
14th,
what-
15th.
14.
Oh.
I'm assuming
Standards
that
don't
what
take
I
effect 15,
read somewhere referred to that there was
Right.
going to be opportunities to review and offer feedback on the standards. But
but that's why they need them by October 1st. So that then they can send them out for review through the end of that year, be able to be, well, they have 2 years to develop the assessment, so you're still working off old assessments for 2 years.
and you can't do assessments in 2 years.
No, you know.
Oh, sure.
You can't go through the process.
2 years
Right.
from when we turn in the standards?
2 years from when they're
When
accepted.
the law was implemented.
No, they should have 2 years from when the school board,
when they
the state
approve
board
it.
approves the standard.
Yeah, they have to be in by October 1st. The state board reviews, if approved and adopted, new assessments will be created, but it gives no time frame for that. Oh, it does say that whatever the standards are, they will be implemented in 2016-17. So just in case the teachers don't have anything to do, that will fill up 2016-17.
But we'll be giving tests, but we don't really have time to develop.
It doesn't say anything about, it says new assessments aligned will be used, so yeah, 16-17. We're talking 2 years from now.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I mean, that's not even logical.
Year
But
to-
No,
that's-
that doesn't even,
We have
that
a
doesn't
year to
even fit
develop
into.
and 3 months to approve.
Shoot, it takes 3 years to put together a
Plus
assessment.
6 months to write the
Because you have
curriculum.
to compile it, field test,
Study.
do reliability and validity studies.
No, they're pacing
It's a
it way
joke.
off, yeah, it's crazy.
Because whoever put that timeline together didn't have a clue.
So the recommendation, do they take recommendations from us on?
What were you thinking?
Yeah. What's the rest of the, yeah, the validity and everything, reliability and validity. I just don't know.
6 months to review the curriculum.
Did we answer the quiz?
I think
Well,
so.
All the
I
questions
think
to the
so.
test, it's like our
So as soon as I can try to get,
I got kicked off, we got back on time.
And if we want to go to 5th grade, I can pull that up and have it right, wait, if that's what you want to do.
yeah, I think that's what they.
While it's still in our mind, and I said,
I have it.
maybe
Yeah.
we use this.
It's just not just an app, but it's
Okay, so Oh, that's my little guy. He's a sweetheart. I have a really cute video. I won't torture you with that. We've been playing with a pumpkin yesterday.
There's rumors that they're gonna have a wedding.
Well, probably the first one he knows. He's 18 months, so.
It's just rumors.
Me and Papa were rolling it back and forth, and he got tired, and he just lapsed on it.
That's it.
If somebody wants to tweak that projector, it's got
One even stated the other that they're not telling educators that
Iowa test basis.
Let's see.
they run out of money.
K-5 Workgroup.
It's gonna be the same little place.
That's
I'll
not
take
the
math
right
literacy
one.
anytime, and I can my kids in that technology.
I think the whole thing
And they
is
don't
just
even give
split
me
off into the crackers.
So my kids are gonna fail the technology. So you just,
Yeah, what if you slide it to your left a little bit, just get it on one table?
I don't know, just future, I think I'm gonna
Scoot.
Okay.
Well, so we'll hit me. I don't think. We scoot closer to you.
Oh.
So that Leanne doesn't have a glare in her face.
I'm gonna have to take off, so you guys want me to
Oh.
touch here? See, that just made it easier for you.
Okay.
Be able to leave this pen for a while.
Okay.
That's what I want.
I do need to. We are. Where we gonna meet?
I know.
Well, November seventh. Do we have that date? We have that place set up. Is it here?
Here.
Yes, and then from there on, I'll have to make the contact to the group. So on November second, we'll be back here.
Okay, so November 7th is here, and
Yes.
are we planning on January 30th to
Yes.
we can lock that in?
I was gonna say, should we try to get other dates or no? Just so that we can let our schools know.
I think on November seventh, we should set the rest of it.
But where was not gonna be there.
Well, if you guys get some dates set, email them to me, because I can probably make most of them work. I think the one Friday, if you were still thinking December 5th is a Friday, but I don't know if that works for, that was a day of December that did work for me, if we went to December. But then that would be the only thing I could do in December. Then if, the other days, the only thing in May 26th, if there's snow days, you can count me out May 26th, I'm sorry, but I can't. There's no way I can be here on May 26th, because that's the end of the school year, quarterly assessments. May testing is all now, I mean, end of the year testing is now pushed into May, and I can't do the May date. So we're gonna have to rethink that date altogether anyway.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Okay, so we're gonna go back to fifth grade.
Okay. Where are we starting?
Well, the first thing that they talked about, they asked about was the very first standard.
I think it was just highlighted because that's where we started, and I put in that picture. It was just a reminder that, I think that's the only thing that, as far as the highlighting.
They did question the wording though, so I guess,
Okay.
do we think that putting in an example or two will clarify the wording?
I think at that time, we were looking at California, maybe, that somebody includes a sheet behind each grade level that showed some stuff, so that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And it was, somebody stated they thought we should do something similar, and so I just stuck something in there so we wouldn't forget that we talked about it.
So we feel like with an example that teachers would understand what was expected on this one. I think that was what the lady's question was downstairs.
Yeah, if we have a good example. I think that was the thought.
She was
Now-
worried about the pattern. I'm trying to think of what,
She
but
was,
we said numerical patterns. I think she didn't read the second bullet. She was thinking we were going algebraic right away, but we aren't. It says using two numerical patterns, so.
And that's what we have up above too.
Nope, yeah, right there, right in the yellow, yeah, so I don't know, okay. You're right. I felt like that was her concern, is that we were pushing algebra too soon, but that we're doing numerical
And then it
patterns,
says
so.
that number two, well, that's numerical expressions, but,
Mhm.
okay.
So I don't think there's much we can change with the first one unless we,
Well, if you look at the California statute, they do give an example right underneath that statement.
okay.
Maybe that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, maybe, and I know this isn't a good example, I just wanted something in there that had the input-output table so that we wouldn't forget. It's just a thought placement marker.
Like they give two examples. So maybe that's what he means by it. But I, you know, I thought that we were gonna do that later.
Yeah.
and I think it makes the teacher friendly and more usable, and they have, oh, okay, real fast. Got it.
Make sure we put the footnote that they are just examples and that
Yes.
there's other ones too
Right,
that could
yes.
fit, because sometimes they get too literal, but yes.
It's very helpful for a new teacher who's unsure of it.
We're good with that one? Or I'm changing?
Are we just gonna address the ones that they talked about?
Is there a,
Cause we had some other things highlighted that they didn't want to mention.
are you talking about
There we
the
go.
solve problems using an appropriate I think we highlighted that because we don't know what to do with the math practices. Like we discussed that with them too, like do we put it in every standard, does it get redundant? By saying in a context of it sounded like they were advocating for us to do that.
Where are you at? I'm sorry, I was
I
putting a note about the footnote.
I just went to the next highlighted one that says solve problems using an appropriate strategy to justify solutions. We didn't really talk specifically about that statement, but we were talking about those practices.
Right, and that one was, those were highlighted just because we talked about putting them in multiple places and we wanted to revisit that. That's the only reason those are highlighted. Because we use that exact same language at least one other place.
But we're not ready today to probably make a decision on that, right? Are we?
I don't think so. I don't know.
I would feel better after I look at, like after we establish third and fourth. I think fifth grade really is gonna hit a lot of that instead of hitting what we have in third and fourth. Since they are testing mean, median, mode, all the measures of center in sixth grade, I mean, they said they had that standard. I don't think we should have the standard in fifth grade. But I also don't like the idea, if we take that one off, just having the one on line graph, but that's the only one I could think that's appropriate at sixth, they're at fifth grade right now. So again, maybe after we
She
do
sounded like
third
she-
and fourth,
She sounded like she was more in favor of eliminating completely
the whole
the whole
domain.
thing, data
Yeah.
statistics. I mean, I'm pretty sure that my wife has taught median and mean
I have.
in fourth grade.
I
So-
taught it in fourth grade. They do not understand the concept of, mean.
The mean.
I mean, they understand the process, you can teach them the steps to do it, but they do not understand it at all. And yes, they were tested on it, and they did. They understood, median and mode, and we did range, but
We don't want them tested 2 years in a row on it, so if they're gonna put it in, I hope to take it out.
And I just think, like they were saying, less is more. It's not saying that we wouldn't teach it. I'm
But-
sure.
and
our board
I
would
did
do
like
it.
her, I did like her point too, if it was gone, then that did open it up for time to go
And you
more in
could
depth
do
with
with your
something
kids
else.
with what you wanted to do. I mean,
If we do
adjust it how
take
you
it
want
out, though, we probably ought to hold the slot open until we come
Pull
back
back.
up there, because we're inevitably gonna be pushing some
Sure.
of it out.
Yeah, there may be something there,
Could be
yeah, sure.
fraction stuff.
And even at that, there's nothing that says that an individual district can't say, well, yeah, okay, it's not in there, but we're gonna throw it in there anyway.
It needs to be developmentally appropriate for fifth grade, but I think that statistics needs to be teaching that every
I'm fine with keeping that in statistics, but it doesn't make sense to have something tested twice. So it doesn't make sense to me to have mean, median, mode if they're gonna test it in sixth grade.
Well, what I think Caroline's saying is leave the data and statistics and create an interpret line graph for right now, but take that standard
Yeah,
out
that's great.
for right now. But then we might, like you said, need to revisit, because we might need to open it up for
variability and there's still, there's some
The
of
range.
that shows that, just make it on the level. Middle ground or the average. Just don't do the mean.
For the
I just don't, I don't think we'll need to have it as a standard in fifth grade if they're gonna have it as a standard in sixth grade. But again, that doesn't mean you don't teach it in fifth grade, it's just we don't have that as a expectation that all kids have mastered it at the end of fifth grade. We wouldn't want that as an expectation because they're gonna have that expectation in sixth grade.
As far as the line graph, that's in the fourth grade standards now, and everybody that I've talked to doesn't have a problem with that.
So then that
The
would
represent and interpret data, it says make a line plot to display a data set of measurements and fractions of a unit. So, I mean, it's even going into fractions in the fourth
and
grade.
that's a line plot, which is a little bit different than the line graph, but I don't know where line graph is specified or if it's specified currently.
It fits nicely with when you introduce the coordinate plane. It's just kind of an example of that.
Common Core starts in second grade, yeah, it does.
Again, in second grade it's line plot. And then it has bar graph, picture graph, bar graph.
And then with the third,
Yeah, I know my resources have on the third grade, bar graph and all that, they felt like that should be a fourth grade item.
I was just thinking, if you take it out of fifth, are you gonna stick it back in fourth grade?
Not the mean, median, mode, oh, in the line graph.
Data and statistics, not.
I think we're taking the
Oh,
entire,
the whole,
I don't think we're taking the entire thing,
No,
out. we
it's
just
still there.
move things from.
We just took out the mean, median, mode. No,
We just take out,
Alright,
take some things from
sorry.
third and fourth, or
so we just leave line graph, which is different than a line plot, and line plot is introduced in those other grade levels.
I misunderstood.
So, did you think, I'm scrolling down, when she was talking about the like measurement, she didn't like the word like measurement, which some had it on there and some didn't, so I don't know what we'll do with that word. But did you think she was talking about dimensional analysis when she was talking about those shapes, like
I do.
appropriate for fifth grade?
Yeah, I don't think that's what we intended at all.
Okay.
I do think that's what she was saying.
And she was talking about like all the conversions from one to the other, and I was thinking, that's definitely middle school, but.
We were just talking simply APR.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Okay,
thought we
so
explained
obviously our wording needs to be fixed so that some assessment person won't like think we're wanting dimensional analysis at 5th grade level.
Maybe we should put an example there.
It's like feet to yard or, yeah.
So are we
I
on
think
number
this is-
4?
On all of the things we talked about, putting in different
Yeah.
illustrations and explanations and.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying earlier too, see, just one person's interpretation got our way off on it,
Yeah, that's,
way away from what we really wanted. So if we took what we had and sent it to each grade appropriate curriculum writer,
they're
just
gonna
to see
be
what they
all
come up
over,
with.
yeah.
But sometimes putting in those examples will clear up that immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they just mean how many feet are in a yard, they just mean, yeah.
Right.
So I don't know, to me, it seemed like we wrote what we were intending, but I was not intending dimensional analysis here. If I intended dimensional analysis, I would write dimensional analysis,
Yeah,
using
but was that
dimensional analysis.
Storms.
So are we taking out like on number 4?
Yeah,
Are we
measurement units.
We're gonna take it out. Okay. Oops.
But what I'm afraid, I don't want, them to have to do conversions between metric and customary.
Right.
It's
It would-
clear though.
okay,
It
all
says
right, so you
within a given measurement system.
Okay,
I don't think,
Sure.
that's pretty clear.
I think standard, that's right.
okay, a standard to standard, metric to metric. Okay,
Thought we did a pretty good job.
Says that, clear it up.
standard to standard, metric to metric.
Maybe
I
that's
mean,
a really good idea.
So standard to standard and metric to metric.
I remember becoming best friends with my trapper keepers just because they had that form, you know, like the conversions inside on that sleeve. When I was in school, like.
Okay, is that one? Let's just stick that in there. Parenthetical spot 2, here we go. That looks funny.
On number 2, instead of solitude, I need to say prisons.
Rectangular prisms. They kept saying right rectangular prisms.
Well, they did for a little bit, but they didn't come back to that, so I don't know.
I thought Nancy said it again, that was what I said, I need to look at our wording to make sure before I shake my head yes, but we were intending right, we weren't intending oblique or any other, so.
Well,
That's what I was like,
It might
let's
be
just
best to
do
just
right,
go ahead and say it.
just say it, and then there's no interpretation there.
okay.
What about the classifying, relate 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional shapes, that wording, I don't know. It was a bullet above the 2.
First of all, that to me seems like that should be 2 separate standards.
Like right here, where,
Right there, hit a return there. But you guys agree or not?
So tell me, like, Ian, what would you, on the 3-dimensional geometric shapes hierarchy?
I think you could have polyhedra, then prisms and pyramids, and then break prisms down into triangular, that kind of hierarchy.
And then cylinders and cones would be somewhere else in the, okay. All right,
I guess that's what we intended, I'm not sure.
relate 2, I just know just classifying the 2-dimensional has been a real challenge for our students, so, but that just may be our students.
She said something about square units, cubic units.
On the measurement piece, that would be,
I wrote down recognize 2D as the surface of 3D. And that was something that they had stated needed to be there somewhere.
what they were saying is that relate 2-dimensional shapes to 3-dimensional shapes and analyze the properties was too open for what we want it to be more
Okay.
limited, so that we're not getting all these strange questions.
And we have the
For our
types of
students.
faces there, so.
So that's what I think she was saying, did she say it, with the three-dimensional, the two-dimensional, the polygons were the
Talking
faces
about
of the
nets.
polyhedrons or something like that.
Yeah, we talked about nets there also. So are we good with that?
With the way it's worded right now.
Yeah. Is there anything we wanna change in this moment? Somebody working back there got hot. They turned up the air, it's cold in here.
The only thing where it says polyhedral solids, we could be more specific and say prisms and pyramids, and then they're not dealing with goofy shapes.
Just change it to prisms and pyramids.
Well, 'cause
Thank you. That word gave me a headache.
Polyhedral. Okay.
I still think that what they were saying about relating the two-dimensional shapes to the three-dimensional shapes is too broad. Because there's all kinds of relationships and we really want it to be about the faces.
well, we could just take that first part off and start with describe prisms and pyramids by the number of edges, faces, and vertices, as well as the types of faces, because that really is how they're related to each other.
Wasn't it something she was saying, like, recognizing that the faces of those two-dimensional objects, they like helps us figure the cubic, the volume.
Mm-hmm. For the solid it was the base that you would. It was with the solids that she was talking about the volume of that.
What did your notes say?
I have that 2D as surface of 3D. Let's see, that's fractions over there. I wrote about the difference between square units and cubic units using rulers. They want to have percent with they have percent in theirs in sixth grade.
The 2D, maybe it was just making sure that they have solid understanding of the 2D faces, was how you figured the area of 3D. And that's where they start talking about the nets.
And I was thinking they said they were gonna keep that in sixth grade, but
The nets?
the nets.
And surface,
Because it
surface
ties
area.
with surface area.
Right, right,
And we weren't doing the area, we were focusing more on the volume.
right.
Which would be important for the science people to know that volume is gonna stay in fifth grade.
Right.
We have, understand the concept of volume and recognize that volume is measured in cubic units. Maybe they only read highlighted parts. We were doing it hodgepodge.
I think she was just wanting to make sure
Yeah.
that it's continued on through everything.
How about if we said on this one, just said, analyze properties of prisms and pyramids, describing them by the number of edges, faces, or vertices, as well as the type of faces, so that it's real specific about, is that
That's better
get at it
instead
well
of
enough?
relating the two, because that opens it up to all kinds of relationships.
Right, is that what we want?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, that's pretty specific.
Yeah.
I have a question, in Dropbox, can we delete some of those older?
I can, which one, but
Well, I
guess we
just
need
don't
to
know, I
decide.
mean, we have like 3 of them that are labeled.
We really only have 2, and one has, for some reason, Jerry Lee's conflict, it starts.
It's all your fault, Jerry.
So,
What did I do?
maybe you emailed it to me.
I haven't emailed anybody.
Well, I don't
What
know
am I
why that's
guilty
in parentheses there. I can
I
delete,
hadn't
you want
seen
me to
it
delete
before
that one?
today.
Okay,
So I don't know where that came
well,
from.
I'm the one that
What did I do
uploaded it.
wrong? That's my,
I
that was my
usually
first thought.
upload it from, and off to the side where there's a name, it's the last person I think that was in it. So I
Is it
don't
in
think
the work-
Jay
your work
uploaded
notes?
it. Here, let me see if we can do it.
That's computer.
Conflicted copy is what it says.
I was
So I
in
just
this morning
deleted that
reading through.
So the only other one I see is academic standards.
There's
Because we have,
two strands in domains.
do you want us to delete? Those
I just
are
said-
like our work in progress. We've established it, so delete them. You good with that?
Delete which ones?
The ones that say strands and domains, how we were putting it all together. Delete it.
I think, I've got it in a file, I think. In my documents.
Shoot.
Or was it user?
It was user error. I got it. Okay, sorry.
I have them in my, work folder if we need to go back for any reason, so. That would help if we only had one set we all looked at. What about, are we done? What about fractions?
On the percent conversation too.
Yeah. We're gonna take out dividable numbers by fractions, correct?
No.
No.
They said,
Divide
I thought they
fraction by
went-
fraction is what they're keeping.
Okay, so we're good with, we don't need those highlighted, because we're good with those.
My takeaway was they want us to make fractions really strong.
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
Always.
I've heard the same sentiment from my district, from the sixth and seventh grade.
Okay, so I don't remember hearing conversation about 2A, estimate results of computations with fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals. Are we good with that one now, or?
The only one that I can think of is if we are asking them to estimate the computation of a fraction divided by a fraction, when that's gonna be covered in sixth grade as or assessed in sixth grade as opposed to here.
So can we put not to include?
The exception is, or just put adding, subtracting, addition, subtraction, and multiplication.
Addition, subtraction,
Adding, subtracting, and multiplying with fractions makes the most sense.
adding, subtracting, multiplying, what'd you say?
That's it.
And then my concern about the and is that they'll put them all in one question. Are we okay with that? Then we're getting back to the order of operations,
We
which we
want
had
or?
another one.
Or
Put more in there, will allow them to not use one of them.
They can, yeah, they can choose, they can, yeah,
They can say, okay, well, we're gonna do fractions, we're not gonna do decimals.
yeah.
And if we're wanting all three of those in there,
And or?
So do we want
I don't know.
as opposed to and? We have add, subtract, multi-digit whole number and decimals, multiply multi-digit whole number decimals, divide multi-digit whole number decimals. And then this one says, results, like adding, subtracting. Really, the mixed numbers are a form of your fraction and your decimal, so I think we'd be okay, because any mixed number is gonna be either fraction or decimal. I
and in there.
But I think you could estimate the results of, when I was thinking of computations, fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, but any mixed number, it doesn't matter if you put it in fraction form or decimal form, it's gonna be a fraction or decimal, it's still a rational number, so I don't think the and is gonna be a problem.
Okay.
Am I reading that wrong? I wonder if mixed number needs to be a separate. No. It seems weird. You can't put rational numbers because that would include others.
What if we put decimals after fractions and then put mixed numbers last?
You could put fractions and decimals including those greater than one.
Ooh, that sounds so
Okay.
much better.
Gives it all.
Fractions and decimals, including those greater than one.
There you go. So then it's not mixed numbers as a separate thing, 'cause it's just really more fractions and decimals, just written down.
So C is okay the way it's worded? With mixed numbers there? Or do we want to use the same language? I think the same language would help, would clarify.
Again, with including no greater than one.
I'm just asking whether it would make sense to keep the language the same, or,
Yeah.
okay, so, does that work? Including those greater than one. What are we going to do with percents?
Well, did you do D? Divide whole numbers by fractions, don't we wanna divide whole numbers by fractions and fractions by whole numbers? We don't wanna divide fractions by fractions,
Right,
but if I have 3/4 and I'm dividing it by 3, I'm gonna spread out 3/4 of the candy bar among 3 people.
right,
We have
yeah,
divide whole numbers, so I have 1, and I'm gonna divide it out, how many fourths are in 1.
right,
But I could also have 3/4 and how many
right,
does each person get if I have 3 people in. We don't want fraction by fraction, and those
Right.
are the hardest contexts. When Kathy was saying they were trying to come up with real life contexts, those are really difficult to come up with. But whole numbers to fraction, fraction, whole numbers,
Right,
individual
right.
numbers, you could
It's like 2 thirds of a
measurement
pizza.
situations,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do we want it added on to D, or do we want it to be a separate one? Divide whole numbers by fractions and fractions by whole numbers.
Right now, let's just put it there, and then we'll see, again, I think a lot of these might end up getting reworded after we get 3rd and 4th in place.
Okay.
Like, we have a better idea of what they're gonna do. So we might have to separate it after.
Okay.
Cause that could get really messy if we weren't careful with fractions divided by whole numbers.
Yeah, and leftovers, and yeah,
If you said unit fractions divided by whole numbers so that you don't have that.
and that's what this one says, apply and extend previous understanding of division to divide unit fractions by whole numbers and whole numbers by unit fractions. So maybe we want to put in the unit.
So whole numbers by unit fractions,
And
that would do some limiting.
unit fractions by whole numbers.
Okay.
Where'd you get that one from?
It's under 7 of the Missouri, like the current Missouri Learning Series, but it has a footnote that students are able to multiply fractions in general, can develop strategies to combine fractions in general by reasoning about relationships between multiplication and division. And it also has division of a fraction by a fraction is not a requirement for this one.
It's not a requirement.
It's not. So that's number 7. Apply and extend previous understandings of division. Yeah, and then they work them all out, like it
Safe travels.
See you guys in November.
says, interpret division of a unit fraction. So I do think we want unit fraction in there, just to limit.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't. I was having to look around, be sorry. Get back out of the way.
So really do we want, like on number 1 of this one, where it says understand the relationship between fractions, decimal, and percent limited to denominators that are factors of 100, that we really would say understand the relationship between fractions and decimals and take off the percent and the denominators? Or do we keep the denominators that are factors of 100?
I thought they kind of liked the denominators part because it was going to lead into percents.
But would we do other fractions and decimals besides that? In 5th grade, we wouldn't do any kind of repeating,
Right.
so the only other one I could think of is eighths, and I don't know. How do you think eighths and sixteenths for the measurement, like on a ruler?
How far did we ask them to divide? Because they're just learning how to divide 5th grade with decimals.
To the hundredths place, using up to 2-digit divisors and 4-digit dividends.
So this could get messy with 16s. It gets taught.
So keep that, and then get rid of the percent. And then given a value less than 1, be able to express its equivalency as a fraction and decimal. And see, I think because we're teaching mixed numbers, we're gonna get equivalency. I don't know. I can keep it though. I'm fine. Because the way we have it right now is if a student saw 1 3/4, I would hope the student would recognize 1 3/4 and 1 75/100 is the same.
Is that appropriate? Yeah.
So do we really want to say, given a value less than 1? I think we put that in there because of the percent.
I bet we did. I don't remember. But that makes sense.
Because they're around mixed numbers. I mean, we're operating with mixed numbers, so they
Right.
have to know the understanding of mixed numbers.
So do we want to go back to our language of given a fraction, including those greater than 1, be able to express its equivalency as a fraction and a decimal? No, that doesn't work.
Give it a value.
Given a value. Including those greater than 1.
just think it's given any value. I don't know, like what, oh, we're not gonna go negative here, but,
No.
But if you don't say that, then.
oh, then they could go negative, that's true, that's right, alright.
Well, it
No,
says
I can't
positive
use it.
fractions right at the top, that's
Yeah.
part of our title.
I was
That's
actually-
why you have those
I-
domains.
I was actually going the route that if you see fractions and decimals and teachers only focus on the ones less than one, and then our assessment thinks that, well, we could have ones greater than one, and if we don't, we're not specific in here. When I think when most people see fractions, they automatically think less than
Yeah,
one.
I do too.
I think we need to keep it in there. That including those greater than one.
Oh, including, because,
What was that?
Less than one, but greater than two.
Well, she's saying the greater than
Great.
one.
She's saying greater than one.
Greater than zero.
Or greater than 12. She doesn't want to go the negative numbers, right? We don't want to go to the
right, but it's
negative
positive,
numbers.
Okay, so
we'll
give
be
it a
fine with that. I
value.
don't think we have to worry about
Greater than any, zero, period. It could be 5.
But then, well, I want it to be worded so it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think our wording's very good. Because
It's any value,
we get
any
this,
positive value.
we get this value and then we're gonna express it as a fraction and a decimal, so how are they gonna give us that value? Like, could that open it up to, we give you a percent and you have to give the fraction and a decimal? We really want them to be able to find equivalent values for fractions and decimals.
In any form. Or in any written form. Value of fractions and decimals.
How about given a fraction or decimal greater than one? Oh, no, a fraction or decimal greater than zero, or whatever. Express its equivalent. That doesn't sound right either. Never mind.
It's any fraction, it could be a fourth and it could be 1 1/4. It could be 3/4 and it could be 7 3/4. So I think it's given a value and we're assuming we're under positive fractions, it's gonna be positive. We wanna express its equivalency in other forms, or in fraction and decimal form, or.
So how are they gonna get that value given to them then? The way you make it sound is they're gonna get something and then they turn it into a fraction or decimal, so I'm worried about
They
how
either
that.
get a fraction
What
and
about
change it to
express-
decimal.
So you don't start with giving a value, start with the express the equivalency. So express equivalency between fractions and decimals with, numbers,
Positive.
with positive numbers, or express equivalency between, with the right word. I think you
Express equivalency,
Would this wording help you at all? Find decimal and percent, find decimal and percent equivalents for common fractions and explain why they represent the same value and compute a given percent of a whole number. Any of that?
Read the first part of it again.
Find decimal and percent equivalents for common fractions.
and decimal and fractional equivalence.
Find decimal and
Find
percent.
decimal equivalents for common fractions.
And vice versa.
And explain why they represent the same.
Then you don't have, I
We
mean,
don't have
we're
to worry
assuming
about
then
this.
that fractions might need
We're
to
back to
footnote
that idea of less
has
than
mixed
one.
numbers, yeah. But that's, I think, I mean,
And
we'll see what they do in 3rd and 4th grade, but I think by 5th grade, teachers understand the fractions are in all forms, like that. They're not just less than one, but they.
So,
I know.
It's gonna be bad.
Don't tell me technology, don't know what I'm
Don't tell what?
okay, what was the first wording on that, Carolyn?
Find decimal and percent equivalents.
I'm a
Common
mess.
fractions. Do you want percent in there?
What if it's
Find decimal equivalents for
Common fractions.
how do I do vice versa without saying that?
What if it's find decimal and fractional for, can you say for positive numbers or for,
Say that again, James, what you
Find decimal and fractional equivalents for positive numbers. If you want positive numbers, that's what I wrote about.
So if they're given a fraction, we want a decimal. If they're given a decimal, we want a fraction. How the heck do we say that?
Vice versa.
Vice versa. Without saying.
Works for me.
Well, what do you call it when you convert one to the other? What's that? Is there a specific name for that? So could we say convert decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So Myra, we said
Including values greater than 1, so we get the, yes,
Okay,
that's
say
what
it again.
convert.
for values greater than 1,
Or
do
0.
you want to say? Do you want to say that at the end?
I like, say what you said again.
I think it said convert decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals.
Now, we also want them to find equivalent fractions for fractions and equivalent decimals for decimals. Because they need to do that too.
Or is that happening before this one?
It should,
Well,
but
it
they-
should be continuing, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
Okay, just a second, I don't have this part then.
they should do that first.
Including numbers greater than 1.
I think that's a different skill though. I think it's a
Isn't
different
that what you
skill.
said?
But do we have that, or is
I
that
don't know
gonna
if
be?
we don't, but if we do, we do. If we don't, we do, we need to.
Okay, so convert decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals, including numbers greater than 1. Is that what we are?
Or we would say including or just four numbers greater.
Well, we don't wanna limit it to just numbers greater than 1.
Oh, I was thinking four positive numbers, sorry.
That's okay.
Including values greater than 1.
Yeah, values and.
Okay.
So yeah, after that one, I think Janet's right. I think we do need a standard for finding equivalent fractions.
We're just representing fractions on the number line. What grade level is that, or is that at multiple grade levels?
Can.
Starts, yeah.
On the first one, do I want and or?
But I still show it in 5th grade.
And it's a good
Or
strategy,
decimals?
like if you don't, it's like the
Or
ruler.
decimals.
It
There
goes
was a
back.
comma where my cursor is right now, I needed to take that comma out. I just wanna know whether I want and or. The parts of the whole can be expressed as fractions and decimals, fractions or decimals. Fractions and or decimals.
There you go.
That's
And
only
or.
to avoid the issue.
And or.
We can fix it later. Okay. Alright, so now we're dealing with equivalence.
Even in 3rd grade, it's understand two fractions as equivalent equal if they are the same size or the same point on a number line. So it starts even in 3rd grade with the initial.
It kind of feels to me like the equivalent fractions, that'll be included when they're adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, so it might not need to be a separate standard,
That makes sense.
just to avoid having an extra statement there. But I'm not married to that idea.
I still think this is really, really gonna be rough until we get 3rd and 4th grade fractions figured out. I mean, it's a shot in the dark, but, and it's not something on paper, but I do think that depending on where we put, what we put in 3rd grade and what we put in 4th grade.
And we've addressed all the concerns from the group downstairs. Too, so.
Well, and they don't even have anything down on paper either, so as soon as they get something down, that may change some of their thoughts and questions.
Well, something we currently do though is finding the area of a rectangle with fractional side lengths. And so they were mentioning volume is a big thing in 5th grade, but we did have some area, and the difference between the area in 5th grade versus the area in 3rd grade is that 5th grade had some fractional.
Yeah, but I think they said they wanted that debate, and
So, just a second,
they
I was
only wanted whole numbers, isn't that what they said?
With volume,
Yes.
to
and
do
this
what?
is with area in 5th grade.
Oh,
then you'd have 3 dimensions with fraction, 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 and they're just learning to multiply the fractions. So it gives it a context for the multiplying fractions. So I don't know, they didn't mention, I mean, I just saw that and thought, we haven't really addressed that with our fractions, but again, I'm good with waiting because I'll feel better about
What we could do when we devise the examples for multiplying fractions, that could be
Somebody's
an
gonna have to
example.
right, because I was distracted.
How could she just put a note, side note, and see?
Yeah, just put like area, revisit after or something regarding area with fractional side links.
Okay.
Their question about understanding cubic units, we have understand the concept of volume and recognize that volume is measured in cubic units. Is that enough to address their concern?
I think so. I think they just missed it and then they skimmed through it.
It wasn't highlighted.
At what point would, if a student looks at a unit of cubic inches, does it automatically say this is a volumetric number? I mean, a volumetric
To me, that would happen here in 5th grade.
in 5th grade, because I kept going from linear to area to volume, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and if I just said, here's a 47 cubic inches,
They
does
should
that
know
automatically, they should know that that's a volumetric number.
that we've got 3 different
There's 3
of
dimensions
those.
that's in 5th
That's-
grade.
Yeah, the cubic.
That's the idea.
Okay, that's what I thought they were, I was just trying to make sure I understood what they were saying.
There's some of us still don't grasp that, though, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Right, they
But-
just think of it as a label.
Yeah, that's what
I
that was what I was getting, should they just recognize that square inches is
think
an
that's the
area,
goal.
cubic inches is a volume?
Yeah, that's what they were stressing down there.
Yeah, and I
They
didn't know
had
where,
that solidified when they got to them.
that's what they
Yeah.
wanted, that's what I was trying to get at, they
Yeah.
wanted that firmly at that point.
And I think that's where you start trying to get the understanding of volume and not just the formula that comes with its height. Like that's when we're trying to get to the point
Yeah.
where the kids are
They
understanding.
kept talking about units, and I thought, when will they understand it? All I got to see, I don't have to see anything geometric, but if I see a cubic unit, I know that's volumetric.
That label
That
tells
label
me
is volumetric.
it's got 3
It's
different.
3 different sides.
Did we get through all of those?
I wonder if though, going, staying on that same topic, under understanding compute volume, if we need to have something about understanding the difference between area measure as squares and volume measure as, that was the one thing they really were pushing, is make sure they understand that difference. And if we don't have it in here as a standard, people may not worry about ensuring that the kids understand the difference between. Does that make sense? And I don't know where else I would put it. It doesn't really fit under number 4, but it could fit under maybe number 2 where we're talking about volume already. And then we,
Well, it would kind of have that as the first point, understand that, recognize that it's measured in cubic units. I mean, that's-
right, but we're needing that comparison.
So we need
Difference
the
between
linear and
area as a
maybe
square
mention
unit.
that here also. Understanding the concepts of linear, area, and volume, and recognize that the measure, and, you have to change the end of the 2 though.
Because they also stress making sure the kids know how to use rulers. And that could go under fractions, it could go under measurement, it could have its own category. It's something that people in the business world are saying our kids can't do. They can't use rulers.
I wonder if we should maybe just make notes of both of those things and then come back to it. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't remember when some of those things are.
I've seen high school kids add squares and cubics, never check the units. I mean, first thing in chemistry, make sure you're adding units that are equivalent. And you have to look at those kind of things. And it's they know, it's just they don't think. They see it and they just start adding. And you really got them to think about, I'm not adding quarts and gallons here. And that's what they'll do sometimes. And that's probably more, not as much lack of knowledge as much as speed or just not paying attention. Because I think they know you can't add gallons and quarts together until you make them into the same unit. So, I don't know, it's just,
Could you just put another bubble in there right under the first one, if they understand the difference between square units and cubic units, or is that too?
Right now, I just have a parenthetical note at the bottom of the whole thing. I think I'm gonna move these notes up those into the measurement area, so we have it in the right spot.
If they got that in fifth grade, it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
should make sense.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Does that work for everybody? That's all my notes from downstairs. I don't know that I had everything, but
I took notes too, I didn't have anything else besides those,
okay.
other than just the general things about what are we gonna do with the overarching principles, but we are not ready to do that today. I think we're kind of like that. I would love to do that right now, nothing on paper, and it's just sitting around everybody's head. And they don't meet again until when? January. I don't even know if someone for sure answer that. Okay,
So are we done?
well, with fifth grade now, I was just handed, another form to fill out. This is, the communication piece that is struggling with this entire process. You saw this? I thought I saw stuff before. So there's very similar questions. I think this is, I don't know where this came from. This is from Destiny, the other one was from Bar's office. So, what I did is I just copied and pasted some of what we just talked about. The very first one, though, is statement of our work group objective, which we really haven't stopped to think about.
What is our work group objective?
Keep the standards.
I think our
Rewrite.
to develop the math standards for K-5.
Concussion, you know who you are.
You know where you are.
Sending you the fifth grade,
Okay, I'll put
and
it
I
out.
dated
And I'll take the other one off.
Okay, and I dated it this time, so that goes off.
Are we good with me deleting the old fifth grade and putting the latest version of fifth grade up in the Dropbox? Can that be the only one that's there?
Move the new out the old.
Are you good with that?
And I still have them all in my folder, so if we would have to revisit for any reason.
Well, you think they could coordinate, get one form,
Well, I'm sending them both ones.
good thinking.
Good thinking. Have, a plethora of more paperwork to go through, and they can price this one, so that's it. Everything else I can do. Description of remaining steps to completion and the work group plan for completion. So I started out by just saying our plan is to meet once a month to continue our structure within all grade levels. I don't know, what do you guys think? I forgot about that one.
Do you have a place for questions? I thought of another question.
Yes, I'll just add to it.
My question is, who is going to take responsibility for putting these into a finalized form?
Right.
I'm kinda hoping it's not us.
And it'd be so nice if the finalized form was similar across all the content areas.
That'd
be nice.
Maybe we should put that into, how are you planning to?
This would be nice if there was consistency across the content areas for teachers and kind of look the same.
It would be beneficial for distract at least similar across both groups. Anything add to remaining steps to completion in our plan for completion? Or is that,
Would you write again?
I just put and I just started this, our plan is to meet once a month to continue our structure in all grade levels.
Mine is December, right? You didn't set a December date. I can't do the fifth, and that was the only one Leslie thought she could do. I mean, I don't know what else to do. December's just hard. That's got January 30th. We could be rescheduling it anyway. I was gonna really push to get the February date, but let's see what December and January brings us first.
And nothing
It
else
could
to
be the April date for rescheduling.
I mean, in our process, we started at the top and
Yeah.
what we were charged
got
with
spring break.
developing. And met with figures above us to make sure that what we were developing was going to mesh together. And then from there, we started at the lowest end, kindergarten. I mean, that's a process, that's what it was.
I recommend taking a short break right now. And then we'll come back and start on kindergarten.
Okay.
Sometimes we do December in
Today is supposed to be 4. I'm leaving about after about 2.
Did you get your Maryland?
Yes, I'll put it up there in a second.
No rush, I just wanted to make sure you got it.
I would like to move that 315 too. I mean, is there any? 1, 2, 3, 7. That would still need 7.
Let's try to nail it kindergarten.
Nail those kindergarten.
Let's nail it, let's try to get finished. So take a quick 5-minute break and then get after it.
Ration break. Yeah. Still only got too much left. Daily geometry and partway into the algebraic thinking.
Myra, could you look at page 8 Dropbox. It's the Massachusetts, resource we have, page 18. The kindergarten. And, see if I can find it in there.
I've got it, the paper copy. I just found last time I couldn't handle everything. It's too
What
much.
I have is not specifically kindergarten. Just things we hope we just about that situations and we ideas to that shoots. I got up on California some
Under what area?
it's the 2001.
You're under that.
Okay, sure. Can you come back with that?
Think a lot better about
Sit here and drink tea, and pretty soon I realize I've got a lot of it.
It's just a talk between. It's like, I understand all different areas.
I did implement that, they're just saying their interest for it at this point.
And I did too, but I think they're afraid that they ought to do it. And I understand. And what are you doing over there? Can you help? Can you do it, Melissa? Did you make the cornbread bread?
I did.
Yes, it was wonderful. I'm gonna make it again. It was wonderful. The cold weather makes me want to cook, so it's so good. It's awesome. Yeah.
Uploaded, downloaded. Yes.
This with you or Chris? Just because I'm okay. Okay.
I didn't sign in because it showed everything. It's over here.
It's not just me for that.
Yeah, that was just this morning.
Thanks for keeping that Dropbox here on.
Oh, that's the easiest job.
I'll take that job. Watch me mess it up, yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Why am I not seeing?
about this time.
Maybe,
Yeah,
it's
you
just
sugar.
eye strain and stuff at this time of day.
Ooh.
I think for me, it's that I eat different foods when I come here, and
It's not your food.
it's not the food that I'm used to eating, and I'm always tired, so I'm drinking so much coffee and caffeine, and by the end of the day, I'm like, shot.
Good help when you get home, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, where are we?
The sixth floor.
What? Good one.
I think we were on operations and algebraic thinking, maybe?
Relationships with algebraic thinking.
Well, yes.
Let's see, we've gotten use a variety of strategies. We spent a long time
Right,
working on
I
that.
think we were on the next one.
Solve word problems.
So, yeah, solve addition, subtraction, word problems. And add and subtract within 10. So, my first question is, do we need to say word problems? Can it just say solve addition and subtraction problems?
Word problem, there's different kind of problem.
Well, I'm fine doing that, but one thing that I think needs to be added to the end is by using objects or drawings to represent the problem, I would say if necessary. One of my biggest frustrations is when my kids can read and like they know the problem and they read it and solve it and they they get dock points because they're not drawing the picture. That's I think very frustrating to parents. And I think it's partly because it doesn't it says they have to draw the problems rather than if they need to draw the problems. And drawing the problems is a tool that they use, but some students might not need to draw pictures.
We just have to make that sense of the circles where
But even if you, I guess you'd have to clarify, because even a school district would have a right to write a curriculum based, whether they use, how they presented the problem. So they could, the school district's curriculum could use drawings instead of objects.
Right, what I'm saying is, if a kid is at the point where they already can read it and say, I know that that's 6 minus 2, and they can do 6 minus 2 and solve it, then they shouldn't have to go back and draw the picture. If some kids are already at a point where they don't need physical representations of what they're working. It's frustrating to those kids when we're saying draw something out, they're like, why? Why do I have to draw that out? So I think if you just add if necessary at the end, it's probably fine.
All right, I'll open this can of worms. What about saying something like, using strategies that allow for fluency? I don't believe fluency and memorization are the same thing. Fluency means I can quickly and efficiently get the correct answer. So for me, I may need to count on or count back. You may use mental math, and may need to get out manipulatives. We all have different ways of getting there, but we're all being fluent in that we're getting the answer. So I don't know that I said it the best way possible, but the idea of allowing the children to find their own pathway to what works for them.
Well, I mean, even we said keep the first part of it, solving the problems, and then the by using part. You need to change that by using, I don't even avoided the word appropriate before, by using trying to think about strategies, what, strategies that are each, I don't want to say a variety of strategies, but I want the kid to have an appropriate or an efficient or an effective strategy, you know.
Appropriate might be the best word, because efficient
Right.
is,
Hard to
I
say
mean,
effective or
yeah.
efficient,
Right.
that's hard to say those words.
So appropriate, I mean, that would leave some leverage of what's appropriate for the kid, what's appropriate for the teacher. Still gonna be interpretation.
In district decision. Or textbook.
Those, that's it. I think that should be getting first grade. I think we need to focus on, having the kindergartners and getting them to think about experiences. I mean, if there's a few that know how to do the addition and subtraction, that's fine. I don't think it should be.
I don't know, I think that with the campaign, I think that they should be able to add two numbers.
And I think of this a lot with stories, like the stories that you're reading, like the Eric Carle books and things that you're solving addition, subtraction from to a story context, and they're just representing it however they want to represent it to get that answer.
And maybe the reason they have using objects or drawings is to keep it more developmentally appropriate. And that's why that's. So Myra, the difference between this and then when we start talking about what we add and subtract within 5, the difference is here they can use materials, and with fluency it's not memorization, but they're not expected to use tools. Is that what the difference is going to be?
I think they can use tools with number 5, if that's what they have to do. But the thing is, when you start getting out counting bears and counting them all out and then taking some away, it's not very quick and efficient. But if I am counting on, I go 3, 4, 5, and I know that's 2. If I'm using my 10th grade knowledge,
I think of it as accurate with very little effort, like I don't have to give a lot of thought to it, I know 5 so well because I've done all these other things that
yeah, I may be checking myself.
with tools
I
or
mean, some kids are gonna
pictures,
do it with their
but
fingers, they're gonna go 3, 4, 5, but they're not going 1, 2, 3, you know. They're
or they
figuring
might
out really
look at
quick.
the line on the calendar or look at the
The 100
5 frame
chart or-
trying to,
Right.
but they know it a lot. I just think of fluent as being described as accurate with
Yeah.
very, very little effort.
Yes.
It's kind of abstract, isn't it? It is.
It's like that super type, it's getting to the point where you know 5 really well. And I think we're operating within 10 and counting in 20 and counting to 100, but we know 5 when we leave kindergarten.
According to NCTM, fast and accurate.
So I see objects kind of coming off of that, I guess, because,
Up of this one,
no, off of the fluency one. Number line, some kids can do it really quickly with number line.
Or what if we said, so I
I know
had
like
initially
flashcards.
said if necessary at the end, but what if we said by using objects or drawings to represent the problem
As needed,
as needed?
can you live with
Should
that?
I read you what's here? It says principles and standards for school mathematics states computational fluency refers to having efficient and accurate methods for computing. Students exhibit computational fluency when they demonstrate flexibility in the computational methods they choose, understand and can explain these methods, and produce accurate answers efficiently. Computational methods that a student uses should be based on mathematical ideas that the student understands well, including the structure of the base 10 number system, properties and multiplication and division and number relationships.
Well, I just put a period after the 10 and put, another bullet point at the bottom saying that, objects and drawings to represent the following are acceptable.
Put a footnote,
I think what we have is fine now. Just adding as needed on, I think.
well, it can always be changed.
And you can even add,
This can always be
you
changed.
could even add in some, if you wanted to put something else in, that using objects or objects, drawings, or other strategies, or other devices, or whatever. I mean, understanding that they could use other forms to do it. Well, that's your call.
No, it's our fault.
I liked it the way it was.
Well, I'm fine keeping it the way it was. I was trying to get at Myra's point that it might not necessarily be objects or drawings.
Because the strategies are part of them being able to do it, where we're specifying that it's okay if they have to have these tools, but if they're gonna have strategies no matter what. Does that make sense?
Well, and part of the difference, I think, with this one is it's word problems, and kids struggle with word problems. They may not struggle with them in kindergarten, but as they get older, we see so many of the kids not getting it. And if they learn to draw a picture or have some kind of a model, whatever it is, it can have a huge impact on them understanding the problem. It may not be the solving that's the issue, it's understanding the problem itself and getting into the problem. So,
I just think a lot of that is in that story context, like
Yeah.
they don't call the word object, they tell a story, and then what's
common
happening in the story.
situations is what we call them at the back. Common situations. And there's those four that they're supposed to be able to solve, you know, maybe we need to be putting that in here. Like
They have enough experiences playing.
both end ends missing, you know, those are just different types of problems, and the kids are gonna attack those differently.
This is the add-in, or this
Right,
is the difference,
right.
this is the sum, or, you know, this is the problem. They just need to understand how to solve it and be good at it.
But we do want them to write numbers, so
You need to write numbers and recognize it, you know, the words.
So are we good with this one now then?
yeah, we just, our kindergarten teachers were just talking about adding in the word form to their sight words, you know, like 1, 2, 3, so they get familiar with that too.
So the next one in common core, which says decompose numbers less than or equal to 10 into pairs in more than one way. So,
Make 10,
well, you know,
that's what, all the different.
well, in numbers less, so 5. In other words, 1 and 4, 2 and 3.
That's a typical standard that's been around, even with the GLEs.
Yeah.
And it is one we went from first grade a lot too, beginning of first grade.
Can we just stop after way? Do we want the whole thing?
I think the whole thing is pretty self-explanatory. We
Okay.
want them to be able to come up with multiple ways to get.
Yeah, I think the decomposition is important there, because eventually we want them to be able to break it apart in a strategic way later on, like not necessarily right now.
And the way it's worded allows for lots of different approaches that kids can take.
So this is all the fact families too.
Number ones.
Right, and it's kind of leading to those, like the properties of operations without saying properties of operations. That's why I said it was algebra relationship.
Yeah, that would even be clearer if the example was 5 equals 2 plus 3 and 5 equals 3 plus 2. Should I change that?
I mean, it's any of the combinations, so that's just an
Right.
example.
It's all right.
But then the next one, I mean, it's basically saying the same thing again.
Except you're given one of the numbers. So you'll be given 5 and you're trying to make 10. Or you're given 6 and you're trying, so it's the missing.
Well, then couldn't we just say decompose and compose numbers? I mean, on the other one?
It's a little bit different because they're finding that missing part if they,
It really is kind of developing subtracting, but they're counting on.
Do you think that's appropriate for 10?
For
Seriously?
10, to make 10.
Yeah.
And process you're doing it in? I don't, I think it's great for first grade. Beginning first graders.
They can use objects, so if I have 6 on the table and I need to get 10, how many more do I have to put down on the table?
Okay,
And
so
then I can count them.
if you have objects there.
Right.
I have 4 apples, how many more do I need to make?
And a lot of times we have the objects on a 10 frame. So they're just figuring out what's missing to fill in the frame, to fill in the missing.
So would someone reading this interpret it that it could be naked numbers, like 4 plus blank equals 10?
Yeah, but it says in more than one way, using objects or drawings and record by a drawing or report. Well, that's a good thing. So,
And so when you have those students that are ready, you know, they can be doing just naked numbers. They can write the equations. They could fill in the missing number. Okay.
No, but what about all the ones that aren't ready?
Well, I said the ones that are ready. The other ones, you've still got the objects that they can use.
And the frames. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we push the 4 frame at the beginning of the year and the 10 frame by the end of the year. You know, like that's so they're literally lining them up on the frame to show what's missing. And they even do quick images so that they get the summatizing of what we're
If
counting.
everybody is doing the 10 frame, I can see that, but I don't see everybody doing that. I just like,
But it looks like the whole principle of all of everything we've discussed so far, okay, is driving the fluency of adding and subtracting in a real small manner of 1 through 10.
Yeah.
This is just like another step where they're still being allowed to do, you know, the fingers and the drawings and all of that, but this is just like, seems like just another piece of it.
And I mean, we could put it in using the 10 frame, but then I think we're limiting. And some people will just say every kid has to, and not every kid needs a 10 frame. You know, like,
yeah, but then when you stretch it onto the words, writing an equation for it, it's symbolic and it's not kindergarten appropriate skills. It's not developmentally
So,
appropriate.
so what if you stopped it after using objects or drawings and didn't ask them to record the, record it?
And it's fine if the teacher writes it on the board and shows them, we will eventually be moving this, but I don't think we should have it as a standard.
Let's say drawing or equation, record the answer with the drawing or equation.
And so many, there are preschoolers writing equations.
I would.
It's
I
what
would
they're
say,
being modeled.
Why do you not want, and I'm not arguing, I think we need to answer the question, what do we want our kindergartners to know? Not necessarily we got kids that can't do it, because we definitely got kids that can't do it. But should we be looking for them to be able to do that? And I guess my question would be, why would we not want it then?
Because if they don't really understand the meanings of what addition is and subtraction is at that age, because their brains aren't ready to do that symbolically, if they're playing games on their level, if they're doing activities that involve, actually, the end result will be this, but it's through a game, it's in a way that they don't even really know they're doing it. They're gonna get those skills easily in 1st and 2nd grade when they're ready to do it. But if you push it down in kindergarten when they're not ready, it's just like you're saying, okay, so you can write an equation here, so what? If they don't really get what it means, they don't understand it, why are we teaching this to our children?
well, I don't think the goal is the equation, but the goal is communicating it. Because we're telling them that we want them to be able to write their numbers. And so we're wanting them to communicate or model whatever it is that they're doing, whatever they're playing, or whatever. So I just see it as a real context for them of why I need to know how to write a 7. I need to know how to write a 7 because when I have 7, this is what it represents and I can do things with it.
But what you're saying is, I mean, essentially they're doing an equation, but they're doing it
On
abstractly,
their level,
at their level with objects and whatever.
exactly.
They're just not writing it from an abstract,
Symbolically.
as you call it, naked numbers. Okay,
Concrete.
concrete, yeah.
Like using, because usually we go concrete and then we represent it and then eventually get abstract. So when we say 7, they'll know how much 7
I
is
just want,
without
all the
seeing.
reason I even bring it up is I just wanna make sure that when we think about that, we don't go backwards just because it's difficult. Should it be appropriate at that level?
So,
Not, if they can't, if
210.
they're having trouble doing it, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be taught there, that just means we're not doing a very good job teaching it or putting it into place, if that's where it
Giving
belongs.
the
But
experience.
developmentally, if that's not the right place for it. that's a whole different story.
So on this one, we're all fine with them making 10, right?
Yes.
Making, so the problem is, on the last part, recording the answer, kindergarten's not a tested subject, so it doesn't, it's locally tested, it's not standardized
Right
tests.
now,
So,
the plans are that it will be.
Could we use expression instead of equation, where all they were doing is representing the 6 and 4 more? And what I envision is something like where you've got 10 at the top of the page, and so they have their starting place, and now they're showing how many more. Maybe they're only writing a 4 on the paper, you know, if that's where they're at. But get away from the idea of equation, just go to the idea of the expression.
But right now, the way it's stated, it's a drawing or equation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's
the
not-
I know.
four would
It's not
actually,
saying it has to.
the four would probably complete an equation. If you had 6 apples on one side of the page, and you just put the plus with a blank on there, how many does it take to get to 10? And they draw 4 apples, then they've done it with drawing.
Right.
They've done it with the number 4, then they've completed it with an equation, because they understand that there's 4 more of those to make 10.
And I can see where that would be, I mean, you could think of it as the expression, because you're trying to make the 10.
Yeah.
in
Well,
total
the
quantity.
reason I thought that direction was one of the points Caroline made. I think the kids can do this, but I also know that we don't ask them to understand the equal sign until 1st grade, which is why I was wondering if backing off equation and using expression instead doesn't mean that schools couldn't still do an equation and put the equal sign. I think the teachers are going to be modeling that, and a lot of your kids are gonna pick it up. But if all we were asking them was to give us the 2 numbers that got to our target,
We kind of already are doing that.
why don't,
We've already got them doing the equations on the one above it, so
I
the
know.
difference here is there's just a number
The
that we're.
10, yeah,
Why
I'm
don't we
missing them.
drop the record part? I mean,
It's kind of a fill in the blank, though.
That's the purpose of
That's
learning
the
to
whole
write
idea.
your numbers. Like,
The
why do
concept
I
is
need
to
to know how to
fill in
write
the
a
blank.
4
That's
if I'm
missing.
not gonna use it in my
Kind
day-to-day
of a
life?
prerequisite of
Right,
word
as a
processing.
kindergarten kid.
like, where we get the,
Numbers of options.
we,
But that's to represent the quantity.
I remember doing it with the 10 frame where we had the like red and yellow, like 2-sided chips, and you'd say, you know, get 7 red chips out. How many more, you know, yellow chips would you need to make 10? Or doing Unifix cubes, where I would say, you know, get 4 Unifix cubes. How many more would you need to make 10? I remember kids going back to my desk and us doing those types of things where I would hand them a stack of Unifix cubes and then they would have to add to it to make 10. It's all like, that's all the same stuff. So the only thing we're asking here is that we're getting hung up and we're getting low on time. That's why I suggest we,
That's fine, we can highlight it, we'll move on.
yeah, put it there and then highlight it or something. Put it, highlight it with whatever color.
Maybe
Or
everybody
just
could look
there.
at
Ask some of our kindergarten teachers what they think should be
Yeah,
better.
I think I might run it by our counselor too, since she has, experience in child development. She took that,
oops. I got in the wrong line, sorry.
I don't have any objections to fluently add fraction 5. Myra, what were you wanting to add to that fluency
Nope.
piece?
No, it's a big talking point in a lot of school districts as to what fluency means. And Caroline and I were talking about it this morning before people got here because of schools that are doing flashcards with the kids.
And what I
And
heard
that's
you read,
memorization to
right,
me,
did
not,
not say flashcard. What you read to me from NCT
No.
does not say flashcards.
I agree,
Put a bullet points about what fluency means.
we could define it.
We can even cite it from NCTM, where it was efficient or accurate with little effort, efficient methods.
Maybe that's something we put in our sort of the preface or whatever we call the,
Yeah,
what is fluency when we say it in here.
it does not mean. Yeah. 10 seconds.
Well, it's like foreign language. Being fluent in
Yeah.
foreign language. I mean, I can quote what computer is in Spanish or what cup is in Spanish by memorizing. But until I start thinking in Spanish, do I become
Right.
fluent?
And the thing is
And it just comes naturally as a thought process as opposed to regurgitating cup, that, and what dog.
if you make that one of your kindergarten standards, you could teach it to kindergartners, but you're gonna spend a lot of time teaching that to your kindergartners. You're gonna have to practice it for at least 8 weeks, at least. And you wanna spend all the weight of your time teaching them how to do those things when they're gonna learn it just like that the next year and the next year, when they could be doing foundational skills that are gonna make them stronger and get all the way around.
I think we're building fluency with all the other things that we're doing. Like with the accounting, we're building fluency, so the fact that it's fluent to 5, I like, because we're really focusing on 10 and 20 and counting to 100, but they're getting to know 5 really, really well.
But there's a lot of little kids in kindergarten that aren't ready to do 2 plus 3, 1 plus 4 fluently. They're just not. They're just not ready to do it. There are some who can, and we're getting, there's a lot that just aren't ready to do it. And they'll get it. So, I mean, I don't think it's appropriate to put fluently and subtractive 5 in. Very, very, very much against it. And if I'm the only one in here who is, we won't.
Well, when you're snapping your fingers, that makes me think of timing, like we were saying, give me the answer in 3 seconds, and that's what we're saying, that we're not defining fluently yet.
And
Like, we really
The
don't. look
concern
at-
probably is that that's how it would get defined in
It
some
will
places. If we
There
don't,
already is. And people will spend all the time making sure there's little kids can.
Which shuts
verbally
kids down
sit
and they
up
don't
and
want
answer,
math.
and there's so many other more problems to work on.
no, but we could down where we're defining fluent would be real specific about it's not.
I don't
Doesn't
want
refer
to
to
lose
all
that
the time.
but I know you guys use it.
Mhm.
I know it's used all the time. I just don't, I think there's an expectation that kindergartner should be able to add and subtract within 5.
Well, what was the
I understand
definition?
fluently define something that I think is
Different.
real difficult to measure what it is, but when they're at the end of kindergarten, they ought to be able to add and subtract within 5.
What, Jana, what was the definition of
But
fluency?
we're solving problems.
Well,
and
this
practice
is,
and
uh,
No.
written by NCTM President Linda M. Gojak. Okay, and it was for articles she wrote on fluency, and that's what I was reading from.
There was, what was it you said? The speed and accuracy or something?
Computational fluency refers to having efficient, accurate methods for computing. Students exhibit computational fluency when they demonstrate flexibility in the computational methods they choose, understand and can explain these methods and produce accurate answers efficiently. The computational
speed isn't
methods
there.
that a student uses should be based on mathematical ideas that the student understands well, including the structure of the base 10 number system, properties of multiplication, division, and number relationships.
So I was just thinking, we could say, add and subtract within 5 efficiently, but then even,
Accurately and
if you do
efficiently.
those, then you get into the same sort of thing, well, what is efficient?
Well, with a computational method they choose, because that's part of it, and understand and can explain their method.
But I think that having that piece too reiterated with whatever our foundation piece could be important, because that could be, because immediately people think speed.
Well, here's one, this is from California. It says, under problem solving, make precise calculations and check the validity of the results in the context of the problem. So if the child's given a problem that requires them to add 2 plus 3, they could solve it. But they're not under the gun to solve fluently,
Not
these little math
fast.
facts over and over, you know, in a given amount of time.
Right.
I understand that and agree with that. Yes, they can learn to do addition plus to 5 or to 10 to solve a
But yeah,
problem.
because I think we're solving problems to 10.
You know, explain how they solve it and be precise in their calculations, but, again, it needs to be developmentally appropriate or on their level.
So if we add the verbiage about using a strategy of their choice or, you know, some
And
of
that
that.
means they get the little plastic barriers out, and they put 5 here and 3 here, you know. You take away the 3, and then, okay, we don't have to show it that way, that would be fluent. We
I don't know
don't.
that, I'd call that fluency.
And then we may
It's
not even
according to
need
that,
that, it's not.
Cause we have it up 10, we have it at 10.
So to me, this one says without, if we leave it in here, it would indicate without extra materials being used.
Right, but it's, you could use different strategies, you could do, you know, counting on, or you could memorize that 3 plus 2 is 5, you could do it maybe how many ways you could do it within 5, but you could do it several ways. But I think that is
Just
sort of,
on a number line in the air.
right, yeah, I mean, you,
Count on to the.
but there is,
This says focusing on efficiency rather than speed.
Another one says explain the reasoning used with concrete objects or pictorial representation.
Three plus
If
4,
we
I
put
mean,
mentally,
3 plus 4 is like.
then they're good forcing memorization. But I feel like the other stuff is too much.
You could add determine the approach, materials, and strategies to be used. Students make decisions about how to set up a problem. Use tools and strategies such as manipulatives or sketches to model problems. Those are all appropriate.
Is the goal there add and subtract with 5, within 5?
No,
I mean, is that
really
what we're trying
well.
to accomplish, whether
Yeah.
it's fluent,
Ex-
exceptionally well, great, whatever term you, that's the standard.
But it really is,
They need to add and subtract within 5.
right, but really less dependent on one-to-one counting, you know, like,
Or
because
take
we've already
theirs.
done that with the other standards. I mean, this standard is really that they know 5, like, if I have 4, how many more?
They've just done it so much.
I mean, we should have, if we're using the 5 frame and the 10 frame, we're counting objects, saying their names, we're understanding the number name tells us the amount. We've got the successive numbers.
If we just put no sums and differences within 5, does that take off some of the pressure?
Or understand, no sums and differences. I'm good with no sums and differences within 5. Know it. I mean, that's what we really want, is for them to really know it.
If you don't
That's not
put
great
fluently in
wording.
front of it, if you don't have fluently in front of it, is it already covered in another one of the standards?
And subtract within 5.
Add and subtract, I mean, if you just said add and subtract within 5.
but there's
Is
not
that
one
already
that calls for them to solve it readily, I mean, that's what,
Right. Because
This-
it's getting to that supervising piece, it's like the foundational piece for 10. In first grade, we were doing 10, in kindergarten, we're really wanting them to be within 5. For that, just knowing it, like being readily
I-
their hand.
I personally, I like when we add and subtract with 5, I think students, by the end of kindergarten should be able to do that.
So you have 3, I mean, it's, your
No, I-
hand is your biggest tool, right
No, I
there,
agree with the
so-
add and subtract within 5, I just didn't like fluently, but that's a standardized term that people, standards use, because I think it's hard to quantify,
I don't like it either.
qualify, but
I like it, but I think we need to have something about what
That it's
what
not about
What you
Dan was
time,
saying, that it's not time.
and it's not memorization
Well,
necessarily.
it's not time, but at the same time, if I say, what's 3 plus 2, and you sit there,
Yeah, you're not.
I don't
then
know
that's
it.
not fluency. So there is an element of time to it. Not saying that it's a time test,
Or-
but
It's that efficiency.
You have to be careful because that's how it's interpreted. We have little 5-year-olds crying because of a time test, and we certainly don't want
Right.
to
Yeah.
encourage that.
And so they're thinking, okay, I should have 5 within 5 seconds, because you can count to 5 in 5 seconds, right? But and so that's where those times get thrown in there, and that's what
that's not.
really shuts some of the thinking down.
Can we highlight it and think about the wording?
Well, I think we're
Well,
gonna come
yeah,
up with
I
this.
highlighted
I'm
That's
thinking of,
usually
like,
easy.
with students, I would put out 5 bearers, or whatever you wanna say, and say, look, how many are there? There are 5. And I would grab someone, put it in my hand without them seeing, and there'd be 2 left out there. How many are in my hand? 3. Put them all back out. Great. I took 1. How many are in my hand? 1. They know it quickly.
Yes.
And it's right. Right. So I mean, you could see in that way how they could get it quickly. And you could do the same thing if you had 4 out there, and I take 2 away, or I take 3 away. How many do I have? And that would be, I think, a fluency building skill and responding quickly.
There's a thing like that called goals and years. It's very good for first graders too. Really good for
So I would say so I taught summer school for kindergarten, and I taught my low first graders would be at that level, would be at the within 5, struggling with it. But by and large, most students, when they came to me in first grade, could do within 5. No problems with the year. It was really the low students.
Who have limited experiences with it. I mean, they just need more games and more of those experiences, and then they can get it too.
and then first grade they get it too.
I can get some documents that they test and they pre-test and they pre-screen before all the kindergartners come in. And it'll tell you exactly what they're testing before they ever get there, just to find out where the deficiencies are based on the expectation of what they're gonna have to know once they get to kindergarten. And that actually qualifies them for some of these programs that are like pre-kindergarten, to bring the ones that are a little behind up to levels so that they can be successful in kindergarten. And they start that, I know in our district, at 4 months. Started
Is
at
that the
4
parents
months.
as teachers?
Yeah, parents as
You know,
teachers.
we screen every kindergarten. Every kindergarten is
I
screened.
know all the districts don't have that.
And it's
But I know
optional.
there's-
You don't have to enroll in the parents as teachers. It's
No, you don't have to, it's all optional, but I know the screening part, now that's a school function. That's a school district function, that isn't a PA. Now, PAT in our district does the testing because they're all certified to do that type of testing, but they have very stringent guidelines and little earmarks that they're looking for, and I know, I asked my wife, she's a director of Kansas teacher there, and she said that they specifically look at the math area, and it's kind of a weird way they do it, but they'll tell you whether or not they're capable.
So what if we said add and subtract within 5 efficiently and with accuracy?
I like that. I like that.
That's close to the wording.
Everybody can see.
Right.
I hope she gets to feel better.
No, what to say.
We'll have
That's all we gotta do is
Take away.
decompose.
The little ones too, I mean, a lot of times you'll start with, say there's a group and you take one away and start that way to kind of get them to understand. That's why those little songs about 5 numbers don't remember and they'll allow them to understand 1 means they're getting smaller. So you can do those things on their level, the take away or the adding to, but at first it's maybe just with 1, you know, and getting that in their head and practicing it over and over again. You know, it takes time. It's gonna take time to do the adding and subtracting efficiently up to 5. It's gonna take your school year to do that. I personally think we should have things like 114.
I think when you're doing all these other things, I don't think it's much more to do it, to add and subtract efficiently within 5. I think you do it in the context of those things. In my class, we do it as we line up. You know, as we're walking to the line, we would practice these types of things. We would sing songs, you know, and a lot of those things are taught in transitions.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, the
counting
teacher
by
counting
fives.
back. Yeah,
Counting by
exactly.
5s
You
is
know
taught in
how much more
transitions.
time.
We're gonna count by 5 to 100. You need to be in line by the time we're done counting by 5 to 100. You know.
Some kids will do that instantly, and others work on all year.
Right, they just need the repetition and continue. I think that's why there is so many literature books based on 5. There's a lot that are based on 5 for those little
Maths
ones.
education. You know what they call it, maths education, or little class repeats it. I think if one doesn't know it, they pick it up, I heard everybody else say.
Lincoln called it the blah, blah, blah.
Okay, are we ready for measurement?
Yeah,
Or do we wanna do geometry?
They're together, aren't they?
they have it separate, I'm sure.
But they weren't separate in our fifth grade,
Are they together?
geometry and measurement.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, you're right.
Are we gonna use non-standard units in measurement? What'd you say? Are we using non-standard units? in learning?
They're not even-
It's long, I don't see it
They're not
listed.
even measuring in kindergarten.
Yeah, they're just describing it, like what, like attribute might be, a measurable attribute.
And
They're
comparing.
comparing more or less. I was thinking that's first grade, we did the paper clips and the,
Yeah.
Which is heavier.
Inches in first grade.
Yeah, I don't, this describe and compare measurable attributes, I don't know if I like the word describe there. I mean, I like to compare two objects, you know, which is heavier, which is longer, those types of things, but describe measurable attributes of objects such as length or weight, describe several measurable attributes of a single object. It's not real clear to me what they're saying.
yeah, I keep thinking tall, taller, tallest.
That's what's in
It's
Massachusetts.
described
Small,
as
smallest, smallest.
Recognize and compare the attributes of length,
Right.
volume, capacity, weight, areas, time, using appropriate language like longer, taller, shorter, heavier, lighter, same weight, holds more, holds less, holds the same amount.
It's basically, I think that like if you have this, they could tell you that, well, we could measure how tall it was, we could measure how much it weighed, we could measure around it. That's how I think of that first one.
How fat it is.
That they can just look at something and tell the different ways you could measure it.
So could it be
I like-
identify instead? Still a DOK one.
And I like the language, I like putting in some of the examples that Janet just
This is
mentioned.
right out of Massachusetts.
And we're
Was that
not
what- was
volume,
that
when
on
we say
kindergarten?
volume.
With the pre-K.
The reason I think they have described this because they wouldn't be expecting the right vocabulary. They wouldn't necessarily
Like
have
I
to
said,
say
fat
length.
instead of
They could
wide.
say tall.
So it says making direct comparisons. Shorter,
Is that
longer,
California?
taller, lighter, six. Yeah, this California is almost exactly the same as Massachusetts.
Yeah, who's the tallest member of the class?
That's the second one on common core too, so they're all pretty similar on the direct comparison.
The big idea in Massachusetts is understand measurable attributes of objects and the unit systems and processes of measurement. It's kind of a big.
So instead of describe, maybe I'm fine with understand. So if the heading there is understand and compare measurable attributes, is that fine with everyone? Understand and compare measurable attributes?
And then maybe give some examples of workgroups.
Well, that's our,
Big idea.
we have a big idea, and now we're going down under it to the
Are you
standards.
just stopping with that?
Yeah, we wanna get, are we, what is the standard number? Well, this one where it's describe measurable attributes, the one I was just talking about, if we, like I said, if we put in some of the examples that Janet was just saying, I would think I'd be fine with it. We had,
So read those again so she could type them.
Recognize and compare.
Wait a minute, Do we want describe measurable attributes or do we want recognize and
I think
compare?
describe measurable attributes, but the describe and compare, because compare, I think, is a separate standard than describing, but then we can describe those that she mentioned.
So you want to
Maybe
describe,
Such as?
Yeah, or an EG at the end or something.
Yeah.
Well, compare would be a separate
I
one.
listed a whole bunch of them, and he read that off.
attributes of length, volume, /capacity, weight, area, and time, using appropriate language. Here's your examples. Longer, taller, shorter, same length, heavier, lighter, same weight.
We get a little long, but we can
We
condense that.
can,
real quick.
yeah, we'll make it
But
short.
those are getting
Holds
into
more,
comparing.
holds less,
And
holds the same
holds
information, direct comparisons.
And
And holds the same mass.
But longer, shorter, taller, wider, those types of things.
Okay.
Long. When it's longer, it's comparing, but we can
Right.
say it's long, or we can
That's-
say it's tall.
It's the same stuff.
So we just take off the EG off this one, right? We keep the other stuff, keep length, volume, capacity, weight. Not that the kids need to know volume, but they need
That's
to
what I
know.
was worried
How
about.
about if we
is
just
they
take the ERs off? How about if we just have long, as examples, long, tall, short, heavy, light? That's describing
Right.
the attribute of one thing.
You might wanna take
Well, then you
time
could probably
off
even take
it.
off the volume and capacity and all those types of things, because you're essentially getting into the same thing, you know.
Mhm.
So
I think
you-
if a kindergarten teacher sees volume, they might freak out a little bit.
Right, so
They do
instead of
know.
doing such as, you just do the EG. Long, tall, short.
I think you need to take time off because it's not an object. It says describe measurable attributes of objects such as weight, area, time. It's not an object.
Such as, so we're gonna take it out anyway, but we'll just say, we're not gonna do the such as, we're just gonna do EG, long, tall, short, heavy, descriptive type of words.
So it says attributes of objects using appropriate language, for example, long, tall, short.
I think that would be good.
No, I know.
Okay, I don't know where I'm at anymore.
Go back to,
You're
right,
doing a
take out-
fantastic job keeping
Yeah,
up with all of our
I think they were saying,
conversations.
go back, such as length, weight, area, and time, take that out.
All of that?
Yeah.
No,
That would be better.
Such as, okay, that.
Appropriate.
Yeah, I think long, tall, short,
I don't think you need same weight, same length, because that's a comparison term too.
right.
Right there, I would say.
Here.
And
Yeah,
I would
we would
period
need
right
those
there.
on the compared one. You
I would
probably
just
should
put-
have cut and pasted that down
Period.
before you started deleting there.
And I would just put an et cetera or something.
Well,
Yeah, take
Holds
out,
more, holds less.
You don't
Yeah.
want to either.
take those out as well.
do what?
The
Oh,
whole
Holds
more.
more, holds less. Like, et cetera. Like,
Save yourself a
how about
lot
et
of time.
cetera?
Yeah, put et cetera in there.
okay.
Why does it have that red bar next to
I
it?
don't know. It happened while I wasn't looking.
That's strange.
I know, it just all of a sudden showed up by itself.
Indeed,
Did it go away?
Yeah.
it just means that it's a bullet. That's all.
Oh, you added a
It
bullet,
stays there
it was
until you
encouraged
finish
for it.
typing the bullet.
Oh,
Oh, you're so smart. That's why there's a circle there.
it's good to know.
yeah, this is the big idea right here.
Are we gonna put time on there? Because that's a big kindergarten skill. Just
Okay.
understanding
A long time versus a short time.
morning, afternoon, evening, yesterday, tomorrow.
Yeah, yesterday.
I'd say that must be right now up to local, it's local control, because we didn't put length or anything in here.
And tools that measure time, clock, word calendar. I've never seen a kindergarten test that didn't have that on.
Nothing.
The bell.
Just think of,
You know, I actually saw a time somewhere over California.
It is,
Well, so demonstrate an understanding of concepts of time, e.g. morning, afternoon, evening, today, yesterday, tomorrow, week, year. And tools that measure time, e.g. clock, calendar. I think that's a decent standard.
I know that was a big comment from all of the school districts was the time was left out.
demonstrate what?
an understanding of concepts of time.
I don't like the word understanding, because that refers to something deeper than a lot of these, they still don't know today, tomorrow, and
I was
yesterday.
gonna say, yes tomorrow is what I get a
Yeah.
lot, yes tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's what
Last
we're
night,
saying.
but you
Yeah,
mentioned
the
a
day
few
after-
minutes ago.
Yeah, the day after yesterday, or the day after yesterday. I know, just trying to remember some of the strange things my
Well,
kids
you could
said.
say, so demonstrate understanding is also know when these statements are appropriate, or know when to use representations of time. And that's how you demonstrate understanding of things.
Because I'm thinking you're developing the meaning of those concepts or those ideas, so what standard would help you?
Would you read the rest of it again?
It says
please?
demonstrate an understanding of concepts of time, e.g. morning, afternoon, evening, today, yesterday, tomorrow, week, year, those all different. And tools that measure time, e.g. clock, calendar. So demonstrate an understanding of concepts of time and tools that measure time.
I think we should write it down and then we'll highlight it and wordsmith it later as
So
we're
again,
late in the afternoon.
So
trying
you
to
say
come up
demonstrate an understanding
with- and I
of
do think we
concepts of
should-
time. Open parenthesis, e.g. morning, do you have it in front of you? Your type. Evening, today, yesterday, tomorrow, week, year, close parenthesis. And tools that measure time, e.g. clock, calendar.
Maybe you should put week, month, year. Just
You know,
the
do they
months
see
of
most
the
time?
year.
Is the
Do
time
they
in
do
first grade?
Hmm.
Is it first grade?
Well, they
Times
don't
an
actually
hour.
do any manipulation with time, like
Tell times in first grade.
But we need time to the hour in kindergarten.
To the hour, yeah, 'cause I think first grade's like 15 minutes.
First grade's
Quarter
half
time,
hour.
half hour.
First grade right now is hours and half hours.
First grade is hours.
and then second grade is when they start really operating
Okay, so-
on time and stuff.
We
So
could-
that's why it's
Work
not
with time
in
and money.
kindergarten.
That's why it's not kindergarten.
Could we put it, tell us time to the hour?
I think
Sure, we want,
that's more
I don't know if that
appropriate
was
first
how many
grade,
hours.
like to
We're
retain
talking
it.
about, I feel this way about,
They can do it, but they don't retain it.
yeah, my fourth graders will struggle with.
Hour and a
Yeah.
half is more appropriate in first
We
grade.
still see the analog
Like
clocks.
it's digital.
When you do digital clocks.
Well, it's really looking at it, like a ruler, the ticks, I mean, that's a lot.
This is a lot. They like to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really do.
Well, and we're giving them a context of it, kind of, because we're saying understand, so if they have a digital clock, they're gonna know, and there's our whole argument for knowing fives. The 5-minute clock.
Well, I don't know, if California says identify the time of the nearest hour of everyday events, e.g. lunchtime is 12 o'clock, bedtime is 8 o'clock. I'm fine with just that on time.
Yeah, I think we could leave that to first grade, because if we're comparing numbers between 1 and 10, I mean, they're gonna be comparing, like, I was trying to think of your example, where you have 3 o'clock, 8 o'clock, which one's later, which one's before it. I mean, 10 is as far as we go, the top goes to 12. So to me, it makes sense to keep it all together when we do it.
They also have named the days of the week. Do we need a specific thing for that?
Well, I think when we talk about week and month, I think we're getting to the names of the months too. You know, like for kindergarten, that's all the songs and
So is a standard needed, or is that one fine, saying understanding concepts of time?
Is that pretty much the same as the top?
Yeah, it's just what,
I think it's fine the way it is. Get too literal, then it's like, is it really a math standard or just a kindergarten standard?
I'm fine with that.
All of them have something about direct comparison for our next one.
So did that, what we just put in, does that fit under understanding compared measurable attributes?
Yes.
Yeah,
Is that orange?
sort of an orange red. I
I
want you to be able to see it when I'm not here next time.
Well, I
You
would
want
put
to
the,
see it but not read
I
it.
can't read the words, yeah.
It should be okay on paper.
I would put the compare standard before that, so it immediately follows the one where we talk about long, tall, short, heavy.
Oh, before the time one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Unless you were comparing, like what, you wanted to compare the number of days in a week versus a year, then you might be doing some comparison there.
are we
So
going to
these
put
in
that
here
in?
would be over.
Because we, in here they have objects, we're talking about
No,
objects,
year's
comparing
longer than
objects.
a day.
Do we want them to know that? I mean, do we want them in kindergarten to be able to?
Well, if you're doing concepts of time, it seems like you would. A day is shorter than a week is shorter than a month. I'm not talking about specific numbers of days or
Just
anything,
the
but just
length.
as a
General
comparison.
comments.
There would have to be a separate standard, I think, because on this one, it says directly compare two objects, you're talking about comparing objects. And so either you have to rewrite it to the standard, you would say both, or you do a separate one of understanding.
What about directly compare two quantities with a measurable attribute in common?
Well, quantities is different though, because this is talking about, you know,
Yeah, we don't know numbers. I was trying to think of how to put months and weeks and
And we could put two objects or
concepts.
units of time or something like that.
Two objects for.
Or maybe it's clear enough in the concepts of time, maybe it's okay there. The comparison of either. Okay.
So then the other one would be directly compare two objects with a measurable attribute.
Oh, I see what they did. You want the example?
Why is that really that much different from the first?
on the first one, we're describing, if you have an object, and you're talking about, is it long,
What
is it
can you
tall, is it
measure?
short?
What could you measure? Yeah.
You know,
What?
This time
Well,
of year, pumpkins are really good for that.
Which one is more?
How big around, how tall, how heavy.
It was just on TV last night.
When it says a measurable attribute in common, is that basically an easy way to say you're talking about the same units? I mean, the
Like
same,
if you're talking about length, or you're
Length.
talking about volume, or
right,
you're talking.
okay.
But not going to units, not going to.
I know you're not
inches.
gonna say that, I know we'd never say that, but I'm just saying that that's kind of what it is,
Leading
back
up to
door,
that.
and then that you're
Like if we're
comparing
gonna
apples and apples and
compare
not.
heights, you're tall,
Right,
you're,
okay.
you know, like,
That's what I thought, I just
And-
wanted to make sure that that's,
So the two objects are basically the same, is that what you're saying, or we have
Well,
something?
I mean, you could compare a giraffe to a goat, but you're comparing height.
Right.
So you got two different things, but it's the same
attribute.
measurement attribute.
Okay, so
that
that's-
you're
which is
comparing
the height,
to,
is one
right.
that's different from yours.
So like with her example with pumpkins, you might be comparing one's taller than the other, or one's more round or fat,
Yeah.
heavier. There's lots of different attributes, but when we're comparing them, we want to compare the same attribute between the two.
I just, if that's what in common meant. So we just gotta say that.
It feels like the example helps on this one, but it'd be
Yeah.
important to keep the example later.
Well, I
could just say directly compare two objects with a measurable attribute in common. It is, you have to think that the moment they're saying, well, what are they saying?
Yeah.
I do like California's where it just says compare the length, weight, and capacity of objects by making direct comparisons, I don't know about this part, with reference objects. So it says compare the length and weight and capacity of objects.
That's
But
not
then you might be
standard.
comparing the length of one object to the weight of another.
What do you say directly compare?
So I think that's where the same attribute comes in. If we're gonna do length, we're gonna do length of both. If we're gonna do weight, we're gonna do weight of both.
Well, that was my thing, is it better to say compare two objects with the same measurable attribute as opposed measurable attribute in common? And that, to me, that sounds like a way to get around something when you're only just saying we just need to use the same measurable attribute to
Makes
compare
sense.
something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Very good. I just worry when we have like length, height, weight, then we're opening it up to other comparisons that we're really not wanting.
What are we wanting there, just height?
It could be height to height or weight to weight, or it could be any of those things, but not height to weight, or, not the same.
We put aesthetics in there.
Can you spell it?
Can we miss a little A?
Let's see, AESTAT.
So it's more aesthetically pleasing. I was compare the length, weight, and capacity of objects by making direct comparisons with reference objects. E.g., note which object is shorter, longer, taller, lighter, heavier, equal to more.
With reference objects.
Yeah, the milk jug. Is it heavier than the milk jug? Is it lighter than the milk jug?
So it's actually putting in the third.
Yeah, that sounds like it's
I think
second or third grade.
I interpret that to mean
This says who is the tallest girl in the class, the
making
tallest
direct
boy, which
comparisons
computer
with
holds more.
reference objects.
Yeah,
It's
so
not
that's
gonna
your-
use snap cubes and say he's 30 snap cubes tall and I'm 20. Or paper clips, the book is 10 paper clips long, the paper is 5. That's what I thought.
That's what it sounds like to me too. It feels like that would be more first grade, I think, where they're actually
Measuring it.
measuring something.
So they do a lot of that in kindergarten. It's in the math chapter, using non-standard objects to measure things. And they go around the room measuring everything, lining up the
We
real
do a lot of
object.
that in first grade. I know, we measure with non-standard units.
Yeah.
I don't, working with what we have, I know why they put more of and less of in quotation marks. I think I'm not a big fan of that. Which one has more of, like, which one has more of, like, or whatever? I
It's
think
more or less.
I don't know, directly compare two objects with the same measurable attribute.
Period.
Yeah,
To see the
and
difference.
describe the difference, again, using appropriate language. So if we could do it like the one before, and describe the difference using appropriate language, e.g., and we could do it exactly the way we did before.
You mean like longer, put the ERs on,
Yeah.
longer, taller, shorter,
Yeah, put it
Like,
back on.
put it back on that one.
You're gonna have to say you're gonna be owning appropriate today.
Appropriate?
Yeah, that's your-
It's your word
Well, I
today.
think that's appropriate. You just say using language.
I know, it could be like
Sort of like the
inappropriate
exotic
then.
shapes.
We have to watch out with those kindergartners, yes.
And then copy the EG from above.
And just add ERs. Copy the EGs, add the ERs.
So do we need it with the example? Since it already says taller, shorter?
Almost needs it so that we.
I would say take,
I don't think
I think
Yeah,
it's
to
in
the
lieu of
appropriate
the
language.
example, right? And then you wanna
Did you put the holds more holds
Yeah.
less? That was a good one. I was on there. I like
Yeah.
that.
Well, we need to have the same in here. Cause we're comparing now. So,
Same,
I don't remember how that was.
Same length,
Yeah, we needed
Longer,
everywhere.
One said same
shorter,
length.
same length.
Yeah, tall and short, reverse there.
Longer, shorter, taller, I don't know if it matters.
Same weight was in there too,
That's right.
hold the same amount,
Shorter, same,
same weight,
Same length.
holds the same amount.
thicker, lighter. Same weight. What's the one that's-
How do you say, on the first one, how do you say how much it holds? Without saying more or less. Holds a lot, holds a little.
That's why you have it separate.
I was just thinking the same thing.
I mean, should we put that or not?
that's what, it's a ton. No, it's not really. It's a whole bunch, a whole bunch.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
What is this one? Measurement and geometry?
So then under common core, the next sort of big idea is classify objects and count the number of objects in each category.
See, I think that's more of a data thing myself.
Oh, well, we
Measurable part.
combined them though, right?
No, this is a combination of geometry and measurement.
Do we have
Isn't
that
it?
one for there?
Oh, yeah, I
We
forgot.
have a data
I
one.
forgot. Yeah,
It's
Same,
different.
got the same.
Yeah, that's data. That's under measurement and data is common core.
Difference.
So under up cars, that, you know,
So would it be worth having a separate category, or could we put this in with the counting?
If you
Speak up.
would you, this, I mean, just, if I had never seen that before and not been involved in this conversation, and I would read that, I would say, directly compare two objects with the same measurable attribute. Now, we just said it's the same measurable attribute. But then we're gonna describe the difference on something that we just said was the same. If I was just somebody reading
Because the
that.
attribute is the same.
it's not the weight.
So the height,
So we're gonna measure the height.
the height
All
is the
the
same
time.
attribute.
And
Oh, so you don't wanna compare that, you wanna directly compare the like measurable attribute of two objects. Or
Using
Actually, you
appropriately.
could take away directly compared to objects, you could just put.
So I think we almost took like just a little bit too much away. Because we all know what it means because we just sit here and beat it to death. But someone that has never read it before,
It's gonna say we're comparing the same and we're
what
telling
are
the
they trying to tell
difference.
me? It's the
You
same
want
or it's
in
different.
common back in there? Is that what you're saying? You want in common
Could
back
you
in
take
there?
out the word two?
we got two different
Compare
concepts in the same
objects with the
sentence,
same
right?
measurable
Yeah.
attribute and
I mean,
describe the
If you
difference.
put a period after attribute, I think everybody understands what that says, right? Compare two objects with the same measurable attribute, period. Okay, I'm not saying do this, but I'm just talking. Then this next one is, we want them to be able to explain the
Describe
difference or describe whatever the term is between the
measurement.
two the measurements.
And who's
Right.
to say we're gonna compare two objects, we might compare 5 objects and do
Oh,
smallest,
smaller,
smallest,
smaller.
smallest, largest.
Oh.
Because that's kind of important in measurement.
What about just compare objects with the same measurable attribute?
Well, his point though is that when you
Describe
say the
the
same
difference.
measurable attribute, it sounds like you're saying the attribute's the same. So, I mean, he's saying that you shouldn't say the same measurable attribute if you're describing differences.
same measurable attribute is either length, weight,
So if we're comparing the two that are the same, then you would be looking for ones that are the same. If I was, I mean, I'm just trying to think out of the box, like I just kind of close my eyes and open that and just read it this way.
be
And then
honest, you
close
fell
your eyes
asleep and
again.
then woke up.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, because we're trying to get in the heads of how many different people around the state, and how many other people are gonna look at that saying, well, they want me to compare the two that are the same?
Can you say directly compare objects with a common measurable attribute?
Which is what we
Common.
did have.
I think
You kind
common
of reversed
is what
it,
it
you
should
had
be.
it reversed with a common measurable attribute.
So,
Now, to me, that explains it, but does
and
a
you gotta take
layperson
out,
say, what does common could just mean a ordinary?
what do you say,
But I'm-
directly compare objects on the same attribute, or by the same attribute?
With,
I think
common
same.
measurables,
I think
that would- yeah, that would.
It's
Common.
just same.
You don't like common versus same?
Would you say compare and measure objects and describe the difference?
Difference there, objects with a common measurable attribute and describe the difference using appropriate method. I'm okay with that, but I think I would take the two out, but that would be me.
See, and the reason I've held out on that just because I wanted to address it. It's really a first grade standard
Right,
to start talking about tall, taller, tallest. And that's been a first grade standard for a very long time, since I started teaching.
right.
But it's also been a kindergarten standard to take objects and put them in order according to their size.
But we wouldn't want to assess,
or the size
I don't think. If we got into an assessment, we wouldn't want to get
Yeah,
to,
because the third grade it is, that's where the reference comes in too. Compare the links of two objects indirectly by using a third object.
yeah.
And so
So
order
maybe the
three
two is a
objects
very
by
appropriate
link.
thing.
And
Because we're
I
not
mean, they
wanting
can
to go
always do
beyond.
more. It's not limiting them to doing more, but it's limiting them on what they assess.
I still don't like this.
Okay.
I think it needs to be two sentences. I'm back to
Okay.
thinking that.
So you want a period after attribute and have a letter on describe? In one paragraph or?
Yeah, it can be one paragraph, but
Well,
the and.
you can always
seems
add the
creepy
and, let's
there.
take it out and see how it looks.
Or maybe,
Oh, am I in the wrong place or what? Attribute.
or maybe it doesn't have to be two sentences, but something about that describe any differences between the objects or something like that. It describes what difference, doesn't,
Like describe the difference between the objects.
something like that. Or describe any differences because they may be the same.
Maybe you could start with that, describe the difference. Describe the differences in objects using a common measurable.
We're getting brain dead. We did this last time.
We should
Oh,
know when to stop.
we need to chew on this one maybe.
I think we know what we want to say, it's just I'm not sure what that.
Yeah.
Right.
Common measurable attributes, describe the difference.
Because now we know we're looking for two objects that are longer or shorter. You know, we're looking for things that are not bigger or round, but tall, you know, we're looking for the same attribute. But what the difference is and describe what it is, which one's taller, which one's shorter.
What about
That was
describing,
for the
what about
same.
describing the comparison? Because if we're using the same on anything, then we don't have a difference.
Exactly.
So what if we describe the comparison using appropriate language?
Right.
So now it's taller or shorter or holds more.
Right, so we're looking for the common attribute.
Yeah, so we're directly comparing and then we're describing the comparison
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I like
for
that.
now, for today. For a few minutes.
And now it could just be one sentence if you don't want to have two sentences. Now it would make sense to me.
What do you wanna do?
Just keep it for now.
Okay.
We can always change it.
It's 3:54, guys.
Yeah. We can always change it.
Alright, are we? What are you saying, Anne?
I was saying it's 3:54.
So you got,
She's just
you got
like-
6 minutes to get that sentence right.
Well, I've done what I
So
can
we should
do.
note that, there's still some work to do here in kindergarten. Basically, we didn't, under the stuff that's in common core, we didn't get to classify objects, one, and we didn't get to stuff in geometry.
Claire, are you sending it to me then?
I will. I got that cleaned up, yay.
Are you gonna send it out to every?
I was just gonna send it to Marilyn.
I was gonna
She'll
put it in the
on
Dropbox before, that's why I couldn't shut down yet, I needed to get going, but I wanted to get it in the Dropbox before I left.
I'm doing it right now.
Did you get Dropbox with some honey?
No, in fact, my daughter kindly wiped out all of my websites too, so
Oh,
I've been
no.
putting them back in a little bit.
Oh, so maybe you should email it to all of us, Myra, and then I'll put it in the Dropbox as a backup, but at least they have a copy of it.
That's a good date.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it,
Are you
right there.
still speaking to her?
Okay, so I
Didn't
need.
hear that.
Are you still speaking to your daughter?
No,
Janet,
She's-
I think
she
you're
works
in
very
here.
hard.
How's
Okay.
your email start?
very proud.
J.A. Criminal 13.
There you are. I just needed the start, and you need it?
Mhm.
And help me start your, email so that I can find it.
Okay, HKM,
HK, there you are. See, that's all I needed. I just need to get it started.
okay,
Cause I don't have you all in here by name. I just have
Okay.
emails. Anybody else want it directly to them? Okay,
That's Carolyn C.A. What is our past project?
there you are.
To the Dropbox,
Yeah.
Okay, and everybody else can get
You created
Dropbox?
Just me, my.
you created it.
Okay.
Okay, I hope that's it.
Well,
James going to the Google Drive trying to find stuff.
Remember, yeah, it doesn't your bank account password?
Yeah, you got anything in it?
Not much.
I can share mine, but there was not there. I know, 4 children.
Boy, and I'll tell you, I had 2 months where I didn't get paid from one job that started this one. Oh my goodness, it was a rough 2 months. We're back in the swing of things now.